Chapter 2288. Chi-Will changed into a pale yellow dress and came out of the bathroom with a red face. Unsurprisingly, the underwear she wore fitted her perfectly. She felt like she was being watched, from the outside to the inside. But she had to admit that the dress was very comfortable. It was light and soft, but not too translucent. When she saw herself in the dress in the mirror, she realized for the first time that she could look so good in a dress. Chi-Will, this dress is so beautiful. It fits you perfectly. Mia's eyes lit up when she saw Chi-Will coming out of the bathroom. Thank you. Chi-Will nodded slightly and blushed even more. He was a man that she had barely met, but he was able to prepare clothes that fit her perfectly. It was hard to explain. Then let's go downstairs. The show is still waiting for us. Mia held Chi-Will's hand and went downstairs. When they passed by the kitchen, Chi-Will glanced at Meg with mixed feelings. She didn't know whether to praise him for having sharp eyes or for being a pervert. It fits you quite well. Meg also noticed her. He walked to the kitchen door and nodded at her with satisfaction. Sivir changed out of her leather armor and shorts and put on a long dress. She let down her long hair, revealing a head of wavy red hair, a hot figure, and healthy wheat-colored skin. She looked like a supermodel. He wondered how she would look when she put on that leopard print swimsuit. Wow, Sister Chi-Will looks so pretty in a dress. Amy exclaimed. Everyone looked over one after another, revealing expressions of admiration. Chi-Will was a little uncomfortable with the attention, but she was also a little happy. She had never worn a dress in front of anyone since she became a mercenary 10 years ago and took over the Rose mercenary group. Most people would be attracted by her hot body, but they would restrain themselves when they saw the boomerang on her back. However, very few people would look at her with such an admiring gaze, just like how sometimes she couldn't help but look at the beautiful girls who walked past her. Gina has already sung 3 songs. Now, it's time for Chi-Will, who has changed into a beautiful dress, to give a new performance, Angela said as she looked at Chi-Will. Me? Chi-Will was stunned for a moment before he waved his hand and said, I can't sing or dance. As a mercenary, she had only learned skills to protect her life and become stronger. Among them, she had not learned any entertainment skills such as singing and dancing. Angela shook her head with a smile and said, It's okay if you don't know how to sing or dance. You can just perform something you're good at. Didn't Amy just perform breaking a rock on her chest? Chi-Will lowered his head and looked at his chest. He didn't think that would work. However, her gaze quickly fell on the chopstick holder on the side table. Her eyes lit up as she said, I know what I can perform for everyone. She walked to the table and took out a chopstick. She spun it on her fingertips and drew a round arc. Then, she threw it out casually. The silver chopstick turned into a silver light and spun twice in the spacious hall before landing in Chi-Will's hand again. So cool. The 4 children's eyes widened and they started clapping one after another. The girls also applauded and encouraged her. It wasn't difficult to do this. Almost everyone present could do it, especially Barbara. As a spatial magic caster, she could control objects very well. However, Chi-Will was a little different. She used pure skills. She used the strength of her wrist and fingertips to make an ordinary chopstick fly back to her hand accurately after completing a complicated flight. This required many years of practice to be able to lift heavy weights as easily as if they were nothing. Chi-Will didn't expect such a great response from everyone. She performed a few other small tricks, such as using the chopstick to hit the small wooden sign at the door and making it bounce back to her hand. Everyone was happy to watch the show. In particular, the children pestered Chi-Will, saying that they wanted to learn this. However, just how to make the chopstick spin on their fingertips was enough to make them stumped. On the other hand, Annie sat quietly at the side, twirling a chopstick between her fingers. This was a skill that many straight-A students could learn on their own. After this interaction, Chiwill's state was completely relaxed. She sat in the crowd and watched others perform. Occasionally, she would chat and interact with others. The smile on her face gradually increased. Although the atmosphere in the Rose mercenary group had always been good, they lived a life of bloodshed after all. Usually, when they went out for missions, their nerves were tense. When they weren't doing missions, they mostly stayed by themselves. Occasionally, they would eat and drink and talk about the mercenary circle. At this moment, Chiwill suddenly realized that she didn't have any female friends. Most of the time, she didn't even think of herself as a woman. However, she really liked this kind of atmosphere where they sang and danced, where they joked with each other, and where they played with each other. She felt her soul relax. Everyone was in a warm room, sitting on a soft and comfortable carpet, wearing loose and comfortable dresses, and surrounded by beautiful young ladies. It was so comfortable. The barbecue is here. Let's eat and play at the same time. Meg brought out 2 plates of barbecued meat and placed them in front of everyone. I'll go get the beer. Mia got up and came back with a pile of beer. She distributed it to everyone. Barbecued meat with beer. Wonderful. Meg also sat down in the middle of the ladies. He raised his beer glass and smilingly said, "Come, let's have a toast to celebrate. I hope everyone can have a good time on this trip. Cheers." Everyone raised their glasses. Then, there was the sound of gulping down beer. That night, everyone had a good time with barbecued meat, beer, lobsters, oysters, singing and dancing. In the middle of the night, Meg put down his glass and looked at the drunk girls on the floor. He sneezed and frowned. He got up and cleaned up the mess. Then, he arranged the girls one by one, covered them with blankets, and let them sleep on the floor. Then, he carried his 2 daughters upstairs and put them on the bed. Then, he went to take a shower and returned to his room to sleep. Wow! It's the sea. We're really at the beach. It's so beautiful. It's like a sapphire. I can't see the end of it. The next morning, Meg was woken up by surprised voices. Meg stretched and opened the curtains. He looked at the blue sky and sea in the distance, and the naughty children who were rolling on the beach in front of the door. End of chapter. Chapter 2289. The flying restaurant landed on an uninhabited island. It was not a desolate place, but the island was very small, and it was in the deep sea. The resources were limited, and even the small demons were not interested in it. Hence, it became an uninhabited island. However, although it was small, the scenery on the island was not bad. There was a golden beach around the island. The sand was smooth and fine, and there was almost no debris. The quality was very high. There was also a small forest on the island. There was a small lake in the middle of the forest. It was a freshwater lake. Coconut trees could be seen everywhere. There were also a few tropical fruits in the forest. Meg could not name them, but he had seen people eat them on the Demon Islands. Because it was in the deep sea, there were almost no mammals on the island. However, it was also a paradise for seabirds. The cries of a few children caused a flock of seabirds in the forest behind the house to fly away in fright. It was quite a spectacular sight. So this is the sea. It's so spectacular. Chiwill stood in front of the house, and looked at the boundless sea in front of her. The waves crashed onto the beach, and the blue sky merged with the sea in the distance. It made her feel very shocked. She used to think that the mountain range of magic beasts was huge. But now, compared to the sea, she realized that the mountain range of magic beasts was just a small mountain range. It was not surprising at all. Other than that, she also felt the heat wave hitting her. Yes, the scorching sun shone on her body. She felt as though she was in Chaos City in August. Luckily, she was still wearing that pale yellow dress. She was still considering if she should change into her leather armor before she went out. After all, the Demon Islands was the most chaotic and dangerous place on the Norland continent. Now, it seemed like she could put that thought aside. If she changed into her leather armor, the first thing she had to consider was whether she would faint from the heat. She turned back, and saw Meg standing by the window on the second floor. Meg noticed her gaze too. He was wearing loose pajamas, and inadvertently revealed his perfect figure with a muscular chest and 8-pack abs. He smiled at Chiwil. Chiwil blushed, and quickly turned back. She felt her heart beating faster. To a mercenary, the image of a man's bare chest was nothing. But why was his figure so good? Muscular chest, defined 8-pack abs, and perfect curves all the way down. He was just a chef. The weather is really good. If we don't swim a few laps in the sea, it would be a waste of God's good intentions. Meg changed his clothes and went downstairs to make breakfast for everyone. After breakfast, Meg looked at the crowd and said, "The beach chairs are in the storage room at the back. If you want to go sunbathing, you can take them. If you want to swim, you can go upstairs and change." "I want to go swimming. Swimming in the sea is the most fun. I also want to catch sea monsters in the sea." Amy was the first to jump off the chair and run upstairs. "I'm going to soak in the sea too. It's been a long time since I've seen such good weather." Mia followed him upstairs. They had been to the Demon Islands for a vacation before, so they knew the basics. Moreover, everyone had prepared bikinis before they came. Naturally, they wouldn't hesitate and went upstairs one after another. Meg looked at the motionless Chiwil and said with a smile, "Aren't you going to exchange?" "I." Chiwil bit his lower lip and blushed. He shook his head and said, "I don't want to exchange. That leopard print swimsuit was simply too embarrassing." Although she admitted that it looked good, she still couldn't accept the thought of wearing it in front of Mag. "It's been a long time since I felt free. Boss, I'll go to the sea and wait for you guys." Gina was the first to come downstairs. She was wearing her own seashell swimsuit. The two colorful seashells couldn't hide the surging waves at all. They had the original wildness and beauty. Together with her innocent face, she looked pure and lustful. "Go ahead." Meg nodded with a smile. The sea was Gina's home. She couldn't wait to go. "Chiwil, you should change into your swimsuit too. If you don't know how to swim, I'll teach you later," Gina said to Chiwil with a smile. Then, she walked towards the sea. Chiwil's eyes widened a little as he watched Gina walk to the beach with her beautiful back exposed. Then, she jumped into the sea and stirred up some waves. Gina's swimsuit was natural and beautiful, but it seemed to reveal more than her swimsuit. However, she looked so confident and showed off her beautiful figure without any concealment. Meg's expression was also gentle and natural. He didn't show a perverted expression just because Gina wore less. If anything, it was just restrained admiration. Then, all the ladies came downstairs one after another. They had all changed into beautiful swimsuits of different colors and styles. Elizabeth was wearing an ice crystal blue one-piece swimsuit. It accentuated her perfect figure and made her look noble and pure. No one would think that she was blasphemous. Yabamiya was wearing 2 sunflowers. They looked bright and energetic. Barbara was wearing a pink swimsuit. Although it looked ordinary, it was still cute. Phyllis's swimsuit was a little more conservative. It was a cute floral dress. She was still tugging at the hem of her dress when she came downstairs. Her face was slightly red. Chi-Will couldn't stand it when all the beauties were fighting for attention. Meanwhile, everyone was looking at her strangely. She was the only one who hadn't changed into a swimsuit. Sister Chi-Will, where's your swimsuit? Amy was wearing a cute purple swimsuit. She looked up at Chi-Will and said, "Didn't we agree to catch sea monsters together?" Chi-Will was a little embarrassed by everyone's stares. However, he still said stubbornly, "I'll just wear it like this. We'll catch sea monsters. The material of your clothes will become transparent once it enters the water." "Don't blame me for not reminding you," Meg said with a smile as he leaned against the door frame. What? Chi-Will's expression changed slightly. "Also, this is a dress. Do you think you can control it to maintain its current state once it enters the water?" "This isn't some high-end anti-gravity dress," Meg continued. Chi-Will was already imagining the scene of her dress flying up after she jumped into the water. It was too embarrassing. She felt like she had been tricked by Meg from the moment she put on this dress. No, it was from the moment she stepped into this house. "Sister Chi-Will, hurry up and change into your swimsuit. I'll wait for you." "We agreed to meet," Amy said with a serious expression. Chi-Will looked at Amy. He didn't want to break his promise to her. Then, he looked at the girls who had changed into their swimsuits. From the looks of it, her swimsuit didn't seem like much. At least it suited her. "Okay, I'll go change." Chi-Will quickly went upstairs. Chapter 2290. Chi-Will changed into her swimsuit and came downstairs. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw her in a leopard print swimsuit. She had wheat-colored skin and a curvy figure. She looked like a sexy leopard in the eye-catching leopard print swimsuit, exuding an irresistible charm. Especially that eye-catching abyss. Meg raised his eyebrows slightly. He had good taste. It really suited her. "This swimsuit is so sexy, and it suits you so well," Mia complimented. "Why, are they all so big?" Barbara pulled her collar open and took a look. She felt as if she had received a heavy blow. "Sister Barbara, don't be discouraged. Next time, you can also break a rock on your chest," Amy encouraged her. "Thank you." Barbara clutched her chest. This suggestion was not very offensive, but it was very damaging. "I'm going surfing. Help yourselves. Kids who don't know how to swim can play in the sand by the beach," Meg said as he carried a surfboard and went out. In his previous life, Meg had drowned after falling into the sea. Therefore, in order to improve himself, he had been doing swimming training recently. From conquering the bathtub, to conquering Gina's water tank, to conquering the fountain in Aiden Square, and then to the man-made lake. Step by step, it was finally time to conquer the sea. Standing on the cliff by the sea, Meg looked at the turbulent sea. The waves crashed against the shore, making loud noises. As he stared at the sea, the deeper he went, the deeper it became. It was as if there were spirits hiding in it, making him feel suffocated and fearful. Meg closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and jumped down. He was just like a beautiful silver fish. Oh, no. It was a hard salted fish that slapped horizontally onto the water surface. Paw! There was an explosion, and the water splashed up 3 meters high. If the Filipino diving team saw this, they would be ecstatic. Meg did not faint, just a little dizzy. Of course, this dizziness only lasted for a moment. The salty seawater instantly woke him up. In that instant, the shadow of death once again enveloped him. It was as if a pair of invisible hands had grabbed him and dragged him to the bottom of the ocean. He was powerless to break free and could only allow himself to be dragged into the darkness. Just like in his previous life, he was powerless to resist. No. I'm no longer Meg Shin. I'm Meg Alex, a man close to God. A voice shouted in his heart. He instantly opened his eyes, and the darkness suddenly retreated. A waterless space with a radius of 3 meters appeared around his body. Meg floated quietly in the sea just like that. His surroundings were completely silent. He could see that at the bottom of the sea, dozens of meters below, the small fishes and shrimps in the corals were shivering. In the distance, there were also fishes that were fleeing quickly, as if they were frightened by something. Meg stretched out his hand and slowly extended it out of the waterless space. The seawater wrapped around his palm, and space instantly collapsed as the seawater drowned him. However, he did not feel fear or suffocation this time. He still floated quietly in the water, and his expression was calm with a tinge of surprise. Meg was indeed very surprised. He seemed to have obtained the ability to breathe underwater. He did not need to hold his breath or any other breathing equipment. He could directly absorb oxygen from the water. System, what's the principle behind this? Meg asked curiously in his heart. It's just a normal operation of a fake god. There's nothing to explain, the system said calmly. Meg was speechless. Then why didn't I have this ability when I fell into the water earlier? I almost died again, Meg was puzzled. Every ability needs to be activated. What almost killed you earlier was a psychological shadow, the system replied. Meg was too lazy to argue with it. However, in that instant, other than obtaining the ability to survive underwater, he had also completely gotten rid of the fear of the deep sea. He swam towards the bottom of the sea. He had just seen a huge shrimp. The ladies ran to the beach and jumped into the sea. They swam happily like fish. With Gina, a mermaid who had grown up in the water, the ladies in the restaurant had already learned how to swim. Amy swam 2 laps in the water. She looked at Chi-Will, who was still treading water by the beach, and shouted, "Sister Chi-Will, let's go play in the sea. I think I saw a sea monster just now." Chi-Will looked at the blue and unfathomable sea. She looked troubled. She was a little envious of the ladies who could swim happily in the sea like fish. She did not know how to swim. She was a child who grew up in the mountains. She was good at climbing trees, but it was difficult for her to catch fish in the sea. Chi-Will, come here. I'll teach you how to swim. Gina swam out of the water. She flicked her hair and smiled warmly. Then, she reached out her hand to Chi-Will. Chi-Will looked at Gina's hand, then looked at Amy's expectant gaze. She hesitated for a while, but still reached out her hand. Gina grabbed her hand and pulled gently. Chi-Will fell forward into the sea. 1 step away was the abyss. Chi-Will felt as if her feet were stepping on soft cotton. No matter how hard she kicked, her body was still sinking. The water had already submerged her waist, shoulders, neck, and mouth. The salty taste of the sea was so clear, just like her heartbeat that suddenly sped up. Her hands stretched forward stiffly, as if she had forgotten how to struggle. Then, she fell into a soft embrace. The air returned, and a gentle voice sounded in her ears. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Now, relax your body. Imagine that you're like a ball of water. Slowly merge with the sea. Chi-Will felt her heart slowly calm down. Then, she unconsciously followed the voice to position and manipulate her body. The cool seawater gradually became gentle, and she felt an upward force. She only needed to control her body and coordinate with that force. Then, she would be able to float on the surface of the water and move forward with her hands and feet. Now, open your eyes. You've learned how to swim, Gina said. Chi-Will opened her eyes. Her hands pushed the water outwards gently. She floated on the surface of the water with a smile on her face. She had really learned how to swim. It was unbelievable. Thank you, Gina, Chiwil said gratefully as she looked at Gina. You're welcome. Gina smiled warmly. Have fun. The sea is actually the most gentle existence. Sister Chiwil, since you've learned how to swim, I'll teach you how to dive. Look, just like me. Take a deep breath and swim downstream. Amy took a deep breath and dived into the water. Chiwil hesitated for a while. Then, she took a deep breath and swam into the sea with Amy. Chapter 2291. Kids, come over here. Big sister will teach you how to swim. Gina's gaze was fixed on the children who were building sand castles on the shore. Big sister, we don't want to. The three children quickly waved their hands. Especially Ignatsu. His head shook like a rattledrum, and his face turned pale. Swimming is very fun, and it's a necessary survival skill. If you accidentally fall into the water in the future, you won't have to worry about drowning if you know how to swim. Gina walked up to the shore step by step. I don't want to swim. I'm scared of water. Ignatsu threw away the little shovel in his hand, and turned to run. However, he was lifted up by his collar before he could run a few steps. Ignatsu, let's start with you. Look at how chubby and round you are. There's a swimming ring around your waist, and you'll float if you're thrown into the water. You'll definitely learn how to swim very quickly. Gina jumped into the sea with Ignatsu in her hand. Help! Ignatsu let out a scream and a series of gurgling sounds. Go, Ignatsu! Daphne encouraged him with clenched fists, and then instinctively hid half a step behind Jessica. Although she also wanted to swim around in the sea like Amy and be a free fish, the sea was too scary. But the sea was too scary. If he fell into the sea, would he sink? Were there scary sea monsters in the sea that would eat people? Just the thought of these made her feel that the deep blue sea was like a sea monster with its mouth wide open. Jessica looked at Ignatsu, who was flopping in the sea, with sparkling eyes. The expression on her little face changed from fear to interest, and then to eagerness in the end. Ignatsu flopped in the sea for a while, and after drinking a few mouthfuls of seawater, he suddenly realized that he really couldn't sink. The fat on his stomach was like a swimming ring, and it reached an ingenious balance around his waist, allowing him to float on the surface of the water just like that. Hey! I really learned how to swim. Ignatsu exclaimed in surprise. No, you're only floating on the surface of the water with your body talent now. You have to make yourself move. That's called swimming. Gina shook her head with a smile, and pushed him forward gently. Ignatsu fell forward and waved his hand subconsciously. Just like that, his round body that was floating on the surface of the water swam out. Now you have really learned it. Gina nodded in satisfaction. She turned to look at Jessica and Daphne. Before Gina could speak, Jessica had already raised her small hand and said, Sister Gina, I also want to learn how to swim. A smile appeared on Gina's face. She waved her hand and said, Good girl, Jessica. Come over here. Sister will teach you how to swim. Half an hour later, Meg came ashore with a long kelp in his hand. There were all kinds of fresh seafood strung on the kelp. There were more than a dozen crabs that weighed a catty each. Lobsters were bundled up like firewood. Yellow croakers were tied up in a row. There was also a net of large scallops. There's so much seafood. Are we having a seafood feast today? Amy and Chiwil, who could not find the sea monster, had already come ashore. The little girl was the first to run over and asked in surprise. After swimming for a bit, the ladies who were sunbathing by the shore also looked over with expectant expressions. The freshly caught seafood was very fresh. Coupled with Meg's culinary skills, they were already drooling just by looking at the ingredients. Yes. I'll be making a seafood feast for everyone this afternoon. It's all freshly caught seafood. Since we're at the beach, we naturally have to try it. Meg nodded with a smile. He simply caught some seafood and made a normal seafood feast. There were braised green crabs, spicy and garlic lobsters, steamed yellow croakers, a large plate of steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli, a large plate of grilled oysters, and an ordinary pot of sea cucumber and prawn porridge. It was paired with all kinds of fruits that the ladies had just picked. Time to eat. Meg moved the dining table to the beach. Everyone sat around the long table, basking in the warm sunlight and enjoying the sea breeze as they enjoyed this locally sourced seafood feast. Chi-Will looked at the table full of dishes, and her throat moved. She felt a little strange. She felt as if she was not here to work for a mercenary mission. Instead, she was here to have fun with everyone. Not only did she have fun, but she also learned how to swim and could eat delicious food every meal. Meg looked at Chi-Will, who was still wearing her leopard print swimsuit, and said with a smile, "Eat, don't stand on ceremony. Treat this as your own home." Home. Chi-Will glanced at him. Is he hinting at something? But we don't seem to know each other very well. Although we can slowly get to know each other in the future, isn't it a little too soon? Here, have a scallop. Meg picked up a scallop with garlic and vermicelli for her. Thank you. Chi-Will nodded with a blush on her face as she looked at the scallop on the plate. The scallop shell became a natural container. The thick scallop meat was piled with pure white vermicelli and fried golden minced garlic. There were also a few small red chili peppers. The colorful and beautiful scallop was clearly placed with great care. The freshness was already assailing her nose. After swimming in the sea for a long time, the porridge she had in the morning had already been consumed. Now, her appetite was aroused by the aroma, and her stomach could not help but growl. She picked up the scallop, and then put everything on the scallop into her mouth. First, the thick garlic aroma aroused her taste buds. Then, the sweetness of the seafood and the perfect freshness exploded in her mouth. Finally, there was the satisfaction of chewing vermicelli. Every bite was different, and the layered feeling was distinct. All of her taste buds were fully activated, and she could not stop. That carefree feeling came from inside to outside, from bottom to top, as if her soul was rising. She gently bit her lips, but could not help but let out a soft moan. Ah, delicious. Meg looked at her slightly trembling body with appreciation. It was a beautiful arc. Eat more if you like it. Meg picked up a few more scallops for her. Chi-Will bit her lips, and her face was a little hot. She looked at Meg with a slightly resentful gaze, but when she looked at the scallops on the plate in front of her, her hands did not listen to her and picked up one. It was too delicious. This was an irresistible taste. Even if her brain told her not to continue, her body did not listen to her and fell into the abyss. It was Meg's first time making steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli, but it received unanimous praise from everyone. The grilled oysters were also popular. After a while, a large plate was finished. The braised green crab was a little difficult to eat, but the delicious and plump crab meat brought a sense of satisfaction that the small crabs could not compare to. It was also popular with everyone. Chapter 2292. The freshly caught large yellow croaker only needed to be steamed in the most primitive way to enjoy the perfect gift of nature. The tender fish meat was extremely fresh and sweet. Meg took a few bites and nodded in satisfaction. The freshest ingredients were naturally at the source. For a delicacy like the large yellow croaker, he was lucky enough to encounter a school of fish today. Of course, the freshest ingredients were not only at the source, but also in his refrigerator. A refrigerator that went directly to the source had no middlemen, so the freshness was guaranteed. Ding! Since the host's seafood meal has achieved 100% satisfaction, the host will receive the recipes for steamed large yellow croaker, steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli, and grilled oysters. Please pass the test field for the god of cookery within 3 days. Otherwise, the recipes will be taken back. At this moment, the system's voice suddenly sounded in Meg's mind. Oh! Meg's eyes lit up. He didn't expect this feast to successfully trigger the system's reward. However, after thinking about it for a while, he understood that the system was encouraging him to try cooking different dishes and become a real chef. What about the braised green crab? Isn't it quite good? Meg said. That's it. The system was disdainful. Meg looked at the braised green crab that was about to turn into a CD. The control of the fire was indeed a little lacking, but the cooking method and seasoning were improved from the braised lobster. Although it wasn't bad, it was still far from perfect. Alright, that's it. Meg wasn't greedy. The system was already very generous to receive 3 recipes in one go. After lunch, everyone looked up after a while. Meg said, "Why don't we stay at Camilla's castle tonight?" Sure. I like big castles. Amy was the first to jump up and say with a nod. The children's faces were also full of anticipation. There were many fairy tales about castles. Usually, those who lived in castles were either princesses or princes. But this is a vampire's castle. It's a little different from the fairy tales you've heard before, Meg said with a smile. I heard that vampires love to suck the blood of children, Yebamia added. It's too scary. I don't want to go to the vampire castle anymore. I want to go home. I miss Mama. Ignatzu was so scared that his bean sprouts withered. He covered his face and shivered. A hint of fear also appeared on Daphne's face as she leaned closer to Amy, trying to find some sense of security. On the other hand, Jessica's expression was firm, and there was even a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Amy's eyes lit up. She clenched her little fists and said, "That'll definitely be more fun. I want to go. If I meet a vampire that sucks the blood of little kids, I'll beat him up. Then let's go to Camilla's house as guests." Meg smiled and changed the flying restaurant into a big boat. He called the girls to the bed. After the war, Camilla, as the chief of the vampires, returned to the Demon Islands, and did not come to work in the restaurant. As a boss, Meg was not very happy with employees who skipped work for no reason after getting promoted and making a fortune. This time, other than bringing everyone over as guests, he also wanted to ask Camilla if she still wanted to work this time. If she didn't, he would have to hire new people. Phyllis was too busy preparing the ingredients by herself, so he had to share a large portion of the work every time. Sitting at the back of the boat, Meg held a fishing rod in his hand and closed his eyes to take a nap as the sea breeze blew. When it came to fishing, it was up to fate. After all, he was already full. The vampire's territory was not far from here. The boat sailed for about half an hour, and an isolated island shrouded in fog appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was an isolated island made of black rocks. It was faintly discernible in the fog, and it looked mysterious with a hint of eeriness. This island looks eerie. It's so scary. Ignatzu covered his eyes and hid behind the crowd, shivering. Daphne, don't be afraid. I'm here, Amy said seriously as she grabbed Daphne's little hand. Daphne looked at Amy and had an inexplicable confidence in her. It was as if as long as Amy was around, nothing would be scary. We came in a hurry, and I didn't inform her. I don't know if she's at home. Meg put away the fishing rod, threw a big crab hanging on it back into the sea, and walked to the bow of the boat. Chief, Camilla and Dracula have gone out. Let's go and see the Lord Ancestor. You are the most respected person in the family. What's wrong with letting a little girl like Camilla be the chief? Everyone is unhappy. A vampire looked at Maynard, who was stroking the ring in his hand with a gloomy expression, and said with indignation. A few other vampires chimed in, expressing their loyalty one after another. Maynard was silent for a while, and said, Dracula is no longer the Dracula of the past. According to the rules, he has the right to promote Camilla to be the chief. The Lord Ancestor has also tacitly agreed to this. Furthermore, Camilla is my daughter. But Chief, you've worked so hard to lead the vampires for so many years, yet you let that lunatic Dracula and that crazy woman Camilla mess around like this. What will happen to the vampires in the future? We don't even know what to do. Yes, Chief. We know that Camilla is your daughter, but she's not on your side. All the vampires started to voice their opinions. Maynard slowly clenched his fists. He thought of the humiliating scene when Dracula stripped him of his position as the chief. The position of the Lord Ancestor should have belonged to him. He had the power to truly become an immortal existence, but Dracula took it away halfway. Now, Dracula didn't even give him any face. He stripped him of his position as the chief and even made Camilla the new chief. Now, there were jokes about him all over the Demon Islands. Everyone said that he was old and useless. Even his own daughter was riding on him. Report. There's a ship approaching our territory. Right at this moment, a vampire reported from outside the door. A ship? Maynard frowned. All the vampires were surprised too. See who it is, Maynard ordered. Yes. The vampire outside the door replied. The ship broke through the fog, and soon arrived at a relatively flat cliff. Vampires could fly, so there was no harbor on this island that could dock a large ship. It was close to the coast, and there were countless hidden reefs at the bottom of the sea. Meg anchored the ship and stood at the bow. He looked at the two black dots in the sky that were flying closer and closer. 2 Batmen. Oh, it should be 2 vampires. The 2 vampires hovered above the cliff. One of the vampires with sharp teeth looked at Meg, and asked sternly, Who are you? Why are you trespassing on our vampire territory? Chapter 2293. Meg glanced at that vampire and smiled humbly and gently. We are Camilla's friends. We are here as guests. A friend of clan leader Camilla. The vampire and the other vampire looked at each other and smiled. Are you worthy of being a friend of our chief? I think you're crazy. How dare you trespass into the territory of the vampires? Let me taste the blood and flesh of a reckless fellow like you. Let's see if you really have the guts to do so. The skinny vampire sneered. He flapped his wings and swooped down at Meg with a cruel smile on his face. He saw that there were many women and children on the ship and thought that they would taste good. They could kill invading enemies in any way they wanted, including sucking their blood dry. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Meg. His fangs had become sharp and slender, and his hands had become sharp claws. He opened his hands as if he wanted to grab Meg's neck and suck his blood dry. He had not tasted human blood for many years. After all, very few humans were bold enough to drive a ship here. Ah! Ignatzu and Daphne screamed and covered their eyes at the same time. Chiwil held the boomerang nervously. This was a very powerful vampire. She was not sure if she could subdue him, but she had to stop him. Bang! The next moment, a crisp sound was heard. The vampire's face was filled with fear, and then his expression was dispelled by a foldable chair. He was as dashing as he came, and as flustered as he was when he was sent flying. Bang, Bang, bang. Boom. The vampire crashed through a row of trees and finally crashed into an ancient castle, causing half of it to collapse. The scene was silent. The remaining vampire looked at the little girl standing beside the man holding a foldable chair, and then looked at his companion buried in the castle. He was stunned for a while and still could not understand. She looked so small and cute. She looked like a little fairy. How could she have such terrifying power? How could she send a fifth-tier vampire flying in such a violent manner? Amy's girls were also in high spirits. They knew that Amy had amazing magic talent and was the champion of the Magic Caster tournament. But seeing her send a vampire flying with a chair, this scene was even more shocking than hearing about it. So powerful. Jessica looked at Amy in amazement. She did not expect her little friend to be so powerful now. Daphne and Ignazio did not hear the terrifying screams that they expected. They slowly put down their hands and looked at the unscathed Uncle Meg and Amy, who was standing beside Meg with a chair in her hand. Both were dumbfounded. Sibra's mouth also gaped open, and she slowly lowered the boomerang in her hand. Such terrifying explosive power was far beyond her own, and Amy was still asking her to help her catch sea beasts. Her feelings were a little complicated. After all, she had taken this mission so seriously before. In the end, when they arrived at the seaside, they could eat, drink, play, and even wear new clothes. They were also well protected. Enemy attack. The vampire was dumbfounded for a while before it came to its senses and let out a sharp warning. Bam! A folding chair flew over and sent it flying. Noisy. Amy caught the folding chair that was sent flying back. She did not forget to look at Chiwil, and said, "Big Sister Chiwil, I learned it." Chiwil nodded with a complicated smile. "Aren't we here as guests? Why are we fighting? Where's Big Sister Camilla?" Anna asked with a puzzled expression. "Yeah, but they attacked first." "I feel like Big Sister Camilla's name is not very useful," Mia said with a puzzled expression. Meg smiled and said, "Looks like Camilla's position as the chief is not stable enough." If Camilla had any authority in the vampires, these two small fries would not have dared to attack without any warning. Meg had already heard about the drama of father and daughter fighting for power. It was different from Connie. It was much harder for Camilla to force her way to the position than it was for Connie. From top to bottom, there were many voices of opposition. There were probably even more cases of overt compliance. The two vampires were sent flying and smashed through half of the castle. The ancient castles finally reacted. The vampires rose into the air and flew in this direction with hostility. Maynard was the first to fly over. It had been a long time since someone dared to wreak havoc in the vampires' territory. The last time was Rankster and Irina. That did not count. After all, it was not too embarrassing to be wrecked by these two. But who was it this time? Did they think that no one in the vampires could be bullied? Hundreds of vampires flew to the cliff and surrounded the ship. "Who is it? How dare you trespass into the vampires' territory and hurt my people?" Maynard shouted sternly. Meg recognized Maynard. He looked around and did not see Camilla. It seemed like they had come at the wrong time. She was not at home. "We are Camilla's friends. We came to the vampires' territory as guests. Those two just now did not know how to do things, so we taught them how to treat guests," Meg said to Maynard with a smile. Maynard sized Meg up. This man looked ordinary. He was just an ordinary human. However, in the face of so many vampires, ordinary humans wouldn't even be able to stand steadily under their terrifying pressure. How could they still be so calm? Camilla's friends. Maynard frowned. "I am Camilla's father. You are just an ordinary human. How can you be her friend? Is there a difference in strength when making friends? Meg was surprised. I never care if they are strong or not when making friends. Maynard's face twitched. Of course, the strong would only be friends with the strong. The weak could only be looked down upon. What about me? Barbara asked Maynard with a smile as she stepped forward. You. Maynard looked at her and pondered seriously for a while. Suddenly, he looked shocked. You. You are the princess of the Moon Nation, Barbara. The vampires' expressions changed when they heard that. The encirclement expanded a lot. I wonder if I, the princess of the Moon Nation, am qualified to be friends with Big Sister Camilla? Barbara asked with a smile. Maynard smiled unnaturally. He nodded and said, of course. He did not expect Barbara to be on this inconspicuous little boat. The Moon Nation helped the Norland continent to seal the devil, and was respected by all races. He did not want to offend Barbara. He looked around the crowd, and his gaze landed on Elizabeth. He said in surprise, "You are Rankster's daughter?" "Yes." Elizabeth nodded with a cold voice. The vampires were in an uproar, and the encirclement dispersed immediately. End of chapter. Chapter 2294. On the Norland continent, there were two names that represented absolute power. One was Alex, and the other was Rankster. There was no doubt about Alex's power. Whether it was the countless powerhouses who had been defeated by him in the past, or his powerful performance when he sealed the devil twice, he was so powerful that people were convinced. And Rankster was the only man on the Norland continent who could go toe-to-toe with Alex. Whether it was the draw in the Pinnacle battle back then, or the battle with the 10 Pinnacle 10th tier powerhouses in his demonized state in the far north not long ago, they were both terrifying. Therefore, when Elizabeth admitted that she was Rankster's daughter, all the vampires subconsciously dispersed. They didn't want her to misunderstand that they were hostile towards her. Rankster was a protective person. This was no secret on the Norland continent. Although the vampires were one of the top 10 demon tribes, they weren't confident enough to challenge Rankster. The muscles on Maynard's face trembled. Although he didn't want to admit it, he really didn't want to stand opposite Rankster. He didn't know how Camilla became friends with this princess of the Frost Dragon tribe and the princess of the Moon Nation, but friends were better than enemies. His gaze landed on Amy, and he frowned slightly. He felt that this little girl looked a little familiar. Amy waved the folding chair in her hand, and said to Maynard provocatively, "Do you want to try the folding chair too?" Maynard suddenly remembered who she was. She was the disciple of Crassus and Julian, the little fellow who won the Magic Caster tournament in the Roth Empire. He had seen her portrait before. Maynard was a little annoyed to be provoked by a little fellow like this, but he didn't want to talk to her. Although Rankster was protective, he could still be slightly controlled. However, Crassus and Julian, these two old things, had no principles. If they knew that he bullied their precious disciple, he was afraid that they would raze all the castles on the vampire island to the ground tomorrow. Maynard didn't recognize any more people, but that was enough. Given the identities of these three, it was reasonable to say that they were Camilla's friends. Camilla was now the chief of the vampires. The chief's friends had to be treated properly. Camilla is not on the island. Please return. Although Maynard didn't want to get into a conflict with them, he couldn't be bothered to entertain these juniors. Hence, he directly asked them to leave. "All right, we'll visit again next time." Meg nodded. He weighed the anchor and steered the ship away from Vampire Island. Just as Maynard had said, Camilla was not at home, so it was meaningless for them to be guests. They might as well go to the sea and have fun. What a bummer. "I thought we could take on 10 of them," Amy said unhappily as she sat down on a folding chair. Everyone smiled when they heard this. If Big Sister Camilla knew that Amy had trashed her house, she would probably be unhappy, Mia said with a smile. Angela jumped down from the edge of the boat and said with a smile, "Since you can't go to Vampire Island, I'll take you to another place. I'm more familiar with the Demon Islands than you are. There are many fun places here. Alright, I'll leave the rudder to you. You can go wherever you want." Meg gave up his seat. After all, he didn't have any particular destination he wanted to go to. Angela got her bearings, turned around, and steered into the fog. "Chief, are we going to let them go just like that? That little guy injured 2 of our clansmen." "Yes, we can't let them go just like that." The vampires looked at the departing ship and said with righteous indignation. "Why? Do you still want them to stay for dinner? Is being beaten up by a 4-year-old child something to be proud of? Don't you think it's embarrassing enough? You've all embarrassed me." Maynard scolded with a black face. The vampires instantly felt embarrassed and kept quiet out of fear. "This little fellow is Krasu and Urian's disciple. If anyone thinks that they can compete with the 2 of them, go ahead and chase after him," Maynard said as he flew back to the castle. The vampires looked at each other and saw the relief in each other's eyes. Those 2 great magic casters were different from other magic casters. Even on the Demon Islands, they were famous, and ordinary people wouldn't dare to provoke them. As for the best way to infuriate the 2 of them at the same time, it was obviously to attack their only common disciple. This kind of thing didn't seem to have happened before, but no force or race on the Norland continent would want to try it. This ship came and went in a hurry. It didn't do anything, but the vampires couldn't help but think about what Camilla's friends would bring to the vampires. They might not be powerful themselves, but they all had powerful forces behind them. Camilla didn't have a strong foundation in the vampires. She was forcefully promoted by Dracula. When she wasn't around, the vampires still treated Maynard as their chief. However, it seemed like they still had to evaluate some of her relationships outside of the clan before they could calculate her real power. After all, she was the chief of the vampires in name now. This is a nameless archipelago. I named it the 100 Fruit Islands. Every island is very small, but there are all kinds of fruits on the islands. It includes almost all the fruits on the Demon Islands, and there are even a few unique fruits here. I used to love coming here to play." The ship passed through the fog. In the distance, small islands could be seen scattered on the surface of the sea like pearls. Angela stood at the bow of the ship and introduced the island to everyone. "If we stay here, we'll be super happy. We can eat all kinds of fruits tomorrow," Amy said expectantly as she lay on the edge of the ship. "If Amy likes it, we can build a small house here. We can come and stay here for a while when we're free." Meg stood beside Amy and patted her head lovingly. "There's no need to build a house. Don't we have a restaurant that can fly? We can just stay in the restaurant," Amy said shrewdly as she shook her head. "There's a ship over there. It seems like someone has already boarded the island," Anna said as she pointed into the distance. Everyone looked in the direction she was pointing at. There was indeed a small boat docked at the flat harbor in the distance. Someone actually discovered us. How infuriating. Angela stomped her feet and steered the ship towards the harbor. She wanted to see who had come to her private garden. Their ship docked, and there was no one in the ship beside them. They should have already gone ashore. "Let's go. Since we're all here, let's go ashore and take a look." Meg jumped off the ship first. As soon as he got ashore, he saw a blue cloth hanging on a tree branch. On it was written in blood, "Help." Chapter 2295. Everyone stared at the cloth for a while. Judging from the bloodstains, it should have been written not too long ago. That means it was hung here not too long ago. Elizabeth's nose twitched, and she pointed to the left. The smell of blood is in that direction. Judging from the pattern, it should have been left behind by a girl. She might have encountered something terrible, Yebamia analyzed. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go find the bad guys and save Missy. Amy had already taken out her foldable chair, and was eager to try. Let's spread out and look around. This island is so small, so it should be easy to find them. Hopefully, we can make it in time. Meg nodded. Mia, let's scout from the sky. Elizabeth said to Mia. She turned into a silver light and rose into the sky, then turned into a frost dragon with a wingspan of 100 meters. Oh. Okay. Yabamia agreed. He also turned into a golden light and turned into a golden dragon in high spirits. He also rose into the sky and followed Elizabeth to the left. Mia, bring me along. Barbara called out. She turned into a ray of light and appeared on Yabamia's back. Anna, follow me. We'll walk through the dense forest. Shirley held Anna's little hand, turned into a shadow, and disappeared into the dense forest. This is my favorite private garden. How dare these people treat it as a crime scene? Damn it. Angela disappeared angrily. Gina, you, and Jane, Phyllis, and the children stay on the boat. If the bad guys come, flip their boat over. Don't let them escape, Meg said to Gina. Okay. Gina nodded. She waved her hand and flipped the boat over. Meg's mouth twitched. This was really precautionary. Chiwill's expression was also very lively. She finally felt the powerful strength of the people in the restaurant. It seemed that everyone was far stronger than her. Father, let's hurry and set off as well. Otherwise, we might not even see the bad guy, Amy urged. This way. Sivir had already taken out her boomerang and was about to lead the way into the forest. No, let's go this way. Meg grabbed her hand and walked to the right. Didn't Sister Elizabeth say that the smell of blood was coming from that direction? Amy asked in confusion. Chiwill looked at him in confusion. Although the earth here is not round, this island is round. Even if she ran from the left at the beginning, we might be closer to her if we walk from the right, Meg said with a smile. He had already sensed the approximate location of the target on the small island. In the depths of the forest, 2 abyssal demons and 2 minotaur demons smirked as they smacked away the trees that blocked their way. In front of them, 2 disheveled figures were running for their lives in the forest. They were 2 young and beautiful elves. One of them had an injury on her leg, so it was obviously difficult for her to move. The other elf was supporting her as they flew, while casting water magic behind them in an attempt to stop the demons from approaching. However, she was not very powerful. The 5th-tier magic was easily scattered, and could not cause any substantial damage to the demons. Her aura was rapidly weakening as she continued to cast spells and drag a friend along with her. Irina is in the limelight. Will we be fine if we attack elves? What are you afraid of? There's not even a ghost here. We're done for. Just chop them up and feed them to the fish. Do you think Irina can ask them who did it from the fish's stomach? What a pity. Such beautiful elves. If it were in the past, we would have raised them and played with them slowly. Now, we can only play with them once. It's great to be able to play with them once. I haven't touched elves in so many years. They are so fucking fresh. The demon's sinister cackles drew closer and closer, and expressions of despair appeared on the faces of the 2 elves. They had been tricked into coming to this island in search of fruits. They had boarded the ship of these passionate demons, only to find that they had boarded a pirate ship. As soon as they set foot on the island, the demons revealed their true colors. These demons were far more powerful than them, and they were no match for them, nor were they able to shake them off. "Don't worry about me, big sister. You go first. I'll stay behind to delay them. You can shake them off on your own." The injured elf pulled her arm out of the other elf's grasp before giving her a shove before falling heavily onto the ground. She lay sprawled on the ground, holding onto her wand while enduring the pain of her injuries. She began to chant a spell. A series of vines grew out of the ground before binding themselves around the 4 demons. However, she was far too weak. The vines that grew out of the ground were like tiny blades of grass in the face of the 4 demons. They were torn apart at the slightest touch, and didn't even have any effect. The elf that had been shoved aside didn't try to escape on her own. Instead, she used the last of her magic power to conjure up a wall of water in front of them. She turned around and helped the other elf to her feet as she said in a resigned voice, "Idiot, this is an isolated island, where can I run to?" "Then don't be scared, big sister will stay with you. I won't let these filthy and disgusting bastards defile you." A water arrow slowly materialized in front of her, but on this occasion, the arrow was aimed directly at them. The 2 of them were standing in front of one another, so the arrow would be able to pierce through their hearts. "You want to die? Ha, not so fast." A burst of mocking laughter erupted as the water barrier was shattered by a punch. A burly black hand reached out from within the water barrier and crushed the water arrow before lashing out with a palm, sending the 2 elves flying. They crashed into a tree before falling powerlessly to the ground. The 4 demons surrounded them with sinister smiles on their faces as they looked at the immobilized elves on the ground with lecherous expressions in their eyes. "Elder sister." The younger elf turned to look at the other elf lying beside her, and tears flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. They shouldn't have run out on their own. Now, they couldn't even die. Could they only watch as these disgusting fellows ravaged their own bodies? Don't be scared." The elf spat out blood as her eyes were filled with pity and guilt. She was shrouded in helplessness and had no strength to break free. "Little beauty, why are you running away? Serve us well and we can give you a quick death later." The leading demon from the abyss stepped forward with a smile and reached out to grab the clothes of the younger elf. Looking at her tender and beautiful appearance, she was not comparable to those fat women in the tribe. She made him feel more excited than those coquettish succubi. His blood was already boiling. "Don't touch her. We are dark elves. The princess won't let you off." The older elf cried out in despair. "Ha, scream all you want. Even if you scream yourself hoarse, no one will come to save you. Your princess will never know what happened here." The abyss demon said with a sinister smile as he grabbed the collar of the elf. "Scoundrel! Take your pig trotters away." At this moment, a childish voice sounded from afar. Before the person arrived, a black shadow had already whizzed over. Bang! The abyss demon only had time to raise his head before he was sent flying by a chair. The sinister smile on his face was flattened by the chair and instantly froze. Chapter 2296. Just as the abyssal demon's hand came into contact with the elf's clothes, the sinister smile on his face was instantly shattered by the foldable chair flying toward him. The chair's surface instantly shattered, and the abyssal demon was sent flying backward, crashing through several trees. The sudden attack startled the other 3 demons, and they all drew their weapons and adopted defensive stances as they looked into the depths of the forest nervously. The elf who had closed her eyes didn't receive any groping. Instead, she heard a sound beside her ear, and she reflexively opened her eyes to see the abyssal demon smashing through several trees, as well as the other 3 demons with nervous expressions. Big sister, someone's here to save us, the younger elf exclaimed excitedly. The older elf's eyes also lit up, and she turned to look into the dense forest. A red streak of light rushed out from the dense forest, hurtling toward the three demons like a ball of fire. Everyone present also saw who it was. It was a little elf with two balls of fire beneath her feet, and she held a long magic caster's staff in her hand, giving her an awe-inspiring appearance. It's her. It's her. Little Amy. The eyes of the two elves lit up as they recognized who it was. Meanwhile, the three demons were a little confused. Judging from the chair that had just flown toward them, the other party should be a powerful being at least at the 7th tier, so why was it this little girl who had rushed out? Take care of her first, the abyssal demon said coldly. The three demons had been friends for many years, so they had a tacit understanding of each other, and they all rushed toward Amy at the same time. The two beef demons were on all fours, and their horns glowed with red light as they charged toward Amy from the left and right. Meanwhile, the abyssal demon wielded its massive mace and charged toward Amy in large strides. It raised its mace high in the air, intending to flatten her with a single blow. Be careful! The two elves exclaimed. They knew just how terrifying these three demons were. The two beef demons were both at the 6th tier, while the abyssal demon was a powerful being at the 7th tier. Even a normal high-grade magic caster would be no match for the three of them. The abyssal demon that had been sent flying also stood up with the help of a tree. He wiped the blood off his face, and a sinister smile appeared on his face as he said, "Let her live. I like little elves, hee hee hee. Danger." Chiwil, who was following closely behind Amy, was equally shocked when he saw this scene. He swung the boomerang in his hand with all his might, and it turned into a beautiful arc as it flew towards the abyssal demon. Meg, who was at the back of the group, was watching this scene calmly. What was this? It was just one level 7 and 2 level success. Amy could easily crush them a few months ago. However, it was unknown when he had pinched a withered branch in his hand, which was casually hanging by his side. The two bulls charged towards Amy, causing the ground to shake and the trees to break as their momentum surged. When Amy saw this scene, she slowed down a bit. Just as the two bulls were about to crash into Amy, she nimbly flew 3 meters into the air. At the same time, the solid ground beneath the two bulls instantly turned into ice. The two Minotaur demons were terrified. They couldn't turn around or stop. Bang! The two bulls crashed into each other with a dull thud. Then, they fell straight to the ground and fainted. On the other side, the abyssal demon had also arrived with a mace in his hand. He raised the mace high, leaped high, and smashed it down on Amy's head. However, before his mace could land, a red light flashed under Amy's feet. Her petite figure had already circled around his arm, and she suddenly raised her magic caster's staff from bottom to top. Crack! It was the sound of his balls breaking. Accompanied by a tragic cry of pain, the abyssal demon fell from the air while clutching his crotch. He rolled all over the ground, looking for his balls. At this moment, the only abyssal demon who was conscious subconsciously covered his crotch. He looked at the little elf who was flying towards him on 2 balls of flames as if he had seen a little demon. This girl was too scary. She looked like she was only 4 or 5 years old, but she had the terrifying strength to toy with a level 7 demon. Chiwil's boomerang returned to her hand. However, she was also a little surprised at this moment. She had thought that Amy's strength was close to that of a level 7 demon. However, judging from how easily she had neutralized the collision of the 2 6th-tier Minotaur demons, and how easily she had killed a level 7 abyssal demon, her strength was probably higher than she had expected. The two elves were also shocked. They had just experienced the terrifying strength of these 4 demons, but now, they were like little chicks in front of Amy. They couldn't retaliate at all. Not only were the four demons not used to this switch from being the hunter to the prey, they were also stunned for a moment. However, the two elves knew one thing: they seemed to have been saved. Although they didn't know why Amy, who was far away in Chaos City, suddenly appeared here, the most important thing was that she had saved them. The abyssal demon wasn't stupid either. He quickly grasped the situation. This little elf looked small, but she was not to be trifled with. Thus, he turned his attention to the two elves who were lying on the ground. He grabbed a mace and hurled it at Amy with all his might. Then, he sprang up and pounced toward the two elves. His objective was very simple. He wanted to control one of the elves and use her as a hostage so that the four of them could leave this island safely. As for the possibility that they would be hunted down by Irina if the fact that they had attacked the elves was exposed, he didn't have time to think about that for now. Humph. Right at this moment, a cold voice sounded in the sky. The abyssal demon was less than half a meter away from the elf, but a wall of ice suddenly rose up. There was only a thin layer of the translucent ice wall, and it looked as if it could be broken at any time. The abyssal demon threw a punch forward, and his other hand was already prepared to grab the elf. Crack! This was the sound of bones breaking. The abyssal demon's punch landed on the thin ice wall, but it was as if he had punched a thick iron wall. The ice wall didn't budge. There wasn't even a crack on it. However, the abyssal demon's hand was broken. He couldn't stop his body from charging forward, and crashed into the ice wall. He was dizzy from the impact, but he didn't manage to make a dent on the ice wall. The abyssal demon lay on the ground, and saw the wings that covered the sky. It was a giant dragon. A frost colossal dragon and a golden colossal dragon. He couldn't understand why there were so many people on this deserted island that he couldn't even see a ghost on a normal day. Seems like we're late. Shirley came out of the dense forest with Anna, and stood on a tree branch. Her gaze landed on the two elves who were lying on the ground, and her gaze instantly became sharp and cold. Damn it! She took out her longbow and instantly shot out 2 arrows, killing the 2 minotaur demons who were trying to stand up on the spot. Chapter 2297. This island was indeed too small. The moment the commotion broke out, everyone in the restaurant had already rushed over. When the two elves saw all kinds of people emerging from the sky and the dense forest, they were stunned for a moment before crying tears of joy. They had been saved. Furthermore, they recognized Lady Shirley and Mr. Meg. They knew who had saved them. The abyssal demon who was looking for eggs all over the ground and the abyssal demon who had lost an arm were tied up and thrown to the side for the time being. Elizabeth took out 2 bottles of recovery potion for the 2 elves to consume. Yabamiya took out a piece of clothing and draped it over the younger elf. She asked with concern, "Are you all right?" The 2 elves consumed the high-grade recovery potion, and their injuries immediately recovered by more than half. The 2 of them hurriedly stood up and bowed to everyone. They gratefully said, "Thank you. Thank you for saving us. I've seen you before. You are night elves. Why are you here?" Shirley asked the 2 of them. "Lady Shirley, I'm Shay. This is my younger sister, Innie. We followed Lady Ashley to the Demon Islands to search for fruits. This morning, we asked the local demons at the dock for information. These 4 demons." The older elf recounted the story of how the 2 little white rabbits believed the demon's flowery words and stepped into the trap step by step. They were almost humiliated and lost their lives. Looks like Irina needs to be properly educated to prevent deception. This little elf girl is too naive and sweet. She's too easy to deceive. Meg stroked his chin and pondered in his heart. However, their appearance here was still related to him. After all, He was the one who suggested Ashley to come to the Demon Islands to search for fruits to add to their slimming potion. The direction was right. It was just that they had coincidentally encountered bad guys. After hearing the two elves' account, the young lady was filled with righteous indignation. She immediately became hostile toward the remaining two abyssal demons. "Don't kill us. We are from the abyssal demons. My father is the sixth elder. If you kill us, my father won't let you off," the hunched abyssal demon said in a trembling voice. His heart was filled with fear. "Your father is the sixth elder of the abyssal demons. Okay, you don't have a father." Meg nodded. The abyssal demon stared at Meg with wide eyes. It opened its mouth to speak, but as soon as it opened its mouth, Amy stuffed a coconut into its mouth, making it unable to speak. "Then how do we deal with them now?" Mia asked. "For people like them, it's definitely not the first time they've done something like this. It wouldn't be too much to hack them into pieces." Angela took out a sharp knife from somewhere and gestured at the abyssal demon's neck as if it was a pig waiting to be slaughtered. Meg looked at Angela and nodded, "I'll leave it to you." Angela immediately sheathed her knife and stood 2 meters to the side. She shook her head and said, "No, I'm not good at killing pigs. I don't fit my fairy persona." Meg glanced at her, and thought to himself, when did she have such a persona? Wasn't she a pure and lustful woman? Also, this is my secret garden. I don't want their dirty bodies to taint this place, Angela added. Then just throw them into the sea to feed the fish. It's a more ecological way to deal with them, Meg said as he looked at the two abyssal demons. I'll go. Elizabeth grabbed 2 struggling abyssal demons, rose into the air, and casually threw them into the sea. As they fell, dozens of icicles crisscrossed their bodies. Before they fell into the sea, they were already deader than dead. After dealing with the 4 demons, Meg brought the 2 frightened elves back to the ship. They drank a cup of warm water and fell asleep under Gina's sleeping spell. They were frightened. They should be fine after a sleep. Gina checked the injuries on Innie's legs and covered them with a blanket. Meg nodded with a smile. Then let them have a good rest. Let's walk around the island to see the scenery and try the local fruits. I'll cook for you later. The group went ashore again. Although the island wasn't big, there were fruits everywhere, just as Angela said. There were black and purple wild grapes near the beach. The juice was rich, and the sweet and sour taste was irresistible. There was a large watermelon field a little further away. A few children were jumping up and down to pick the melons. They looked like a group of monkeys. Meg took a bite of the watermelon that Amy had frozen. It was cold, sweet, and refreshing. It was great for relieving the heat. The watermelon-flavored weight loss tea seems good too, Meg thought. It was a pity that the watermelon was too sweet. The group split up and went to the other islands to play and collect fruits. Meg also went out and came back half an hour later. He picked 2 baskets of various fruits and said that he picked them from the farthest island. Meanwhile, the Abyss Demon Island 500 kilometers away was in an uproar. The entire island was under martial law. It was said that the 6th elder of the Abyss Demon tribe was struck by lightning on the street. Half of his head was missing. He couldn't be more dead. However, the lightning was also a bit strange. It was a sunny day, so where did the lightning come from? And besides losing half of his head, the 6th elder's body looked normal. It was said that after falling to the ground, he twitched for a while before he stopped moving. The news had already spread like wildfire, but the people at the top did not say a word. They only knew that the elders of the clan had closed their doors and held a meeting for the whole afternoon. In the end, they did not say anything. They just buried the 6th elder hastily, as if he had been struck by lightning. Great Elder, I think the sixth elder's death is strange. It doesn't seem like he was struck by lightning. Then how do you think he died? We were all on the island just now. Did you feel the slightest magic fluctuation? Did you feel the aura of a powerhouse? Even if it was Alex, there should be at least some aura, right? The great elder slammed the table and said angrily. The abyssals glanced at each other. Just as the great elder said, the sixth elder had died in front of them and they hadn't felt anything at all. If it wasn't heavenly thunder, then it could only mean that their opponent's strength was far above theirs. Tell the public that he was struck by lightning. Don't investigate or publicize this matter. Let's forget about it, the great elder said in a deep voice. All the elders nodded and didn't dare to say anything. Others didn't know, but Meg knew. He went to test the gun and fulfilled his promise to the abyss demon. His father was indeed dead. He was very satisfied with the accuracy and power of a shot to the head of a level 9 abyss demon from 20 kilometers away. Moreover, the stealth of the anti-material rifle was too good. It killed people without leaving a trace. After putting away the gun and leaving, he could also pick some fruits on the way back. It didn't waste any time. Meg felt like he was a cold-blooded killer. This newbie setting interested him. It's time to eat. Meg shouted to the girls who were swinging not far away. He made another seafood feast, but added a roasted goat. Amy and the others found it on a small island. There was a large herd of black goats there, and they were very fat. Chapter 2298. Shay and Innie were woken up by the fragrance. After Gina's treatment, their injuries had almost recovered, and the huge exhaustion from the chase made them hungry at the moment. Come over, it's time to eat. Meg waved at the two who were standing at the side of the ship and looking over timidly. The little night elves could be considered one of them. Sit here. Phyllis gestured for the two of them to sit at the side and served them freshly squeezed fruit juice. She asked curiously, "Where's Lady Ashley? Do you know how to meet up with her?" "The island we set off from is called Tranquil Holy Island. Lady Ashley instructed us to return to Tranquil Holy Island if we accidentally got separated. There are night elves stationed there," Shay said. "Then I'll send you back to Tranquil Holy Island after we finish eating." Meg cut the roasted goat meat on both sides and gave it to the two elves who had swallowed their saliva a few times before speaking with a smile. "Thank you." Shay bowed deeply to Meg. Although they also wanted to be more polite, they were really too hungry, and the roasted goat meat in their hands was too fragrant. The two of them couldn't be bothered to be polite as they sat down and picked up their knives and forks to eat. The skin of the roasted goat meat was slightly crispy, but the meat was extraordinarily tender and juicy. The sauce marinated the meat, and the surface was sprinkled with pepper, completely activating the deliciousness. "It's so delicious." Shay's eyes had already narrowed into a slit. A feeling of bliss welled up in her heart, sweeping away her originally bad mood. Delicacies were indeed good medicine that could cure all unhappiness. Innie, who was at the side, also had an intoxicated and satisfied expression. This was the best roasted goat meat she had ever eaten. No, it should be said that it was the best food. Although Sister Phyllis's culinary skills were also very good, and the beef kebabs and mutton kebabs were extremely delicious, there was still an obvious gap between them and Mr. Meg's culinary skills. Meg cut a goat leg for Amy. The little one had painstakingly caught the goat, so of course he had to reward her with a big goat leg. Amy hugged the goat leg and ran to the side. She didn't use a knife to cut it, and just hugged and gnawed on it directly. His small teeth were as sharp as knives, directly biting a small hole in the leg of lamb. He chewed happily. The whole goat was quickly divided up, and everyone was given a large piece of mutton. Meg got a palm-sized lamb chop for himself. He used the fat head fish to divide the lamb chop into long strips, and then grabbed and gnawed on them. This was a goat that had just reached adulthood. It was not small, but its meat was very fresh and tender. When roasting it, he only brushed oil on it once. The rest of the meat was completely roasted with the goat's own fat. What was even more interesting was that this goat had grown up eating hawthorn fruits. The meat had a faint fragrance of hawthorn, and the flavor was particularly unique. The flavor of the sauce was actually relatively light, so the aroma of the goat meat itself was more prominent. The rather chewy fascia coupled with the fat and lean meat wrapped around the lamb chop made one's mouth full of oil and crispness full of flavor. Let's catch a few more goats and bring them back. We can treat them as local specialties, Meg suggested. Alright, I'll go catch some later. I want to eat roasted lamb. Amy was the first to agree. Everyone else also nodded in agreement. Lamb was very cute, but roasted lamb was really delicious. The sumptuous banquet did not end until the moon fell. Meg carried a basket of all kinds of fruits to Shay, and said, "These are all the fruits that can be picked from the nearby islands. You can take them back. Perhaps they'll be of help to your mission." "Thank you." Shay and Innie bowed gratefully and carefully received the large basket of fruits. They had come to the island to look for new fruits. They had gotten lost and were almost humiliated and killed here, but they did not expect to complete their mission by accident. "Get on the ship. We'll send you back to Enchanting Island first, and then we'll go home." The ship that carried Shay and the others sank to the bottom of the sea. Meg's ship also sailed away from the island. About half an hour later, the ship docked at the harbor of Enchanting Island. Shay and Innie carried the fruit basket and got off the ship. They stood on the shore and waved at Meg and the others. "Go back. Be careful." Meg waved and steered the ship away. "Shay! Innie! Why are you here?" Before Shay and Innie could turn around, an anxious voice had already sounded behind them. The two elves turned around and looked at Ashley and the others. Tears immediately welled up in their eyes, and they said in a choked voice, "Lady Ashley, we almost couldn't make it back." "What happened?" Ashley went forward and sized up the two of them. After confirming that they were not injured, she heaved a sigh of relief. "We went out this morning to look for new fruits. At the harbor." The two of them recounted how they had encountered the 4 demons and how they had been tricked into coming to the uninhabited island. The demons had revealed their true colors and tried to humiliate them. Right at this moment, little Amy had descended from the heavens and defeated those demons. She recounted how she had been rescued by Ma, Am and the others. When Ashley and the other elves heard that the demons had bitten the bullies, they were all filled with righteous indignation. When they heard that Amy and Ma, Am and the others had captured all the demons and thrown them into the sea to feed the fish, they felt that their anger had been vented. "You're saying that Mr. Meg and the others are also on the Demon Islands?" Ashley was a little surprised. "Yes, they just left." Shay turned around and looked at the vast sea. There were still ships there. "These are the fruits he gave us. We found them on the islands." Innie raised the large fruit basket in her hand. There were dozens of different types of fruits inside. "Mr. Meg is really a good person." Ashley couldn't help but sigh as she looked at the fruit basket. However, when she looked at the 2 young ladies, she put on a stern face and said, "I've said before that you're not allowed to act alone. Do you know that you almost lost your chastity and lives because of your recklessness and stupidity?" The 2 of them lowered their heads. Nya Nya didn't dare to speak. "All right, let's go back first. I'll settle the score with you tomorrow." Ashley took off her coat and draped it over Innie. She then hugged the skinny little girl and walked back. Shay and Innie looked at each other and smiled. They knew that Lady Ashley was tough on the mouth but soft on the heart. She treated them the best. The bright moonlight before the ship seems to be frost on the ground. Raising my head to look at the bright moon, lowering my head to think of my hometown. Meg stood at the bow of the ship and looked at the bright moon on the sea. He couldn't help but recite a poem. Did you write this poem yourself? Elizabeth had appeared beside him at some point. She turned her head to look at him and asked. No, it was written by a poet from my hometown. Meg shook his head with a smile. Of course, he had changed the words to be more in line with the current context. Where's your hometown? Elizabeth asked again. It's very far away. Meg looked into the distance. It's a place that you can't see. Chapter 2299. After a day and night of team building, Meg rubbed his hands and walked over with a smile as he looked at the beautiful girls who were drunk all over the floor. He packed all of them up and sent them back to the dormitory before setting an alarm clock for 7 o'clock. He also left a note, "Go for it, hit the workers." Meg heaved a sigh of relief after putting Gina back into her aquarium gently and closing the door gently. He was indeed a good boss. When he returned to the restaurant, Irina was playing Plants vs. Zombies on her tablet. Ugly Duckling was squatting beside her and looking at her with great interest. Meg wondered what was so fun about such a small game. He couldn't help but stand at the side and watch for a while. Then, he asked with a strange expression, "What game are you playing? Aren't we rearing zombies?" Irina said matter-of-factly as she lit up a small sun neatly and planted a potato in front of a zombie. Oh, I see. Meg nodded thoughtfully. That made sense. Irina only had two operations when she played this game: collect suns and plant potatoes for the zombies to eat. It was indeed his first time seeing someone using Plants vs. Zombies as a rearing game. Look, there are more and more of them. It's just that the pigsty isn't big enough. Otherwise, I could make them give birth to more. Irina waved the tablet in her hand at Meg. They're rearing well. Meg nodded and sat down opposite Irina, waiting for her brain to be eaten by the zombies. 10 minutes later, Irina ended the game in a good mood. She raised her hands and stretched, stretching her beautiful curves. She said with a smile, "This game is too easy. I can successfully rear so many zombies every time." Yes, this game is quite easy. Meg nodded with a smile and passed a cup of warm water over. Irina took a sip of water and raised her eyebrows as she asked Meg with a smile, "Have the girls settled down?" Meg said calmly, they've all been sent back to the dormitory. I even set an alarm clock for them to go to work." TSK, what a ruthless capitalist. Irina rolled her eyes. "You can have fun, but you can't be late for work. That's the basic principle," Meg said seriously. "Isn't Hope School starting tomorrow? Are you not going to attend the start-of-term ceremony?" Irina asked. Meg slapped his head. "If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. Let's close the school for the day. As a part-time teacher, I have to attend such an important event." Luna had told him about Hope School's opening ceremony before, and she had even invited him and Gloria to attend it. Of course, Meg couldn't refuse such a thing. He would definitely be there tomorrow morning. "By the way, we met 2 young night elves on an island today, and they almost fell into the claws of a few demons," Meg said to Irina. "There are still demons who dare to lay their hands on night elves?" Irina's expression turned cold. Meg briefly recounted what had happened today to Irina, and said with a smile, "They were lucky to have met us this time, but they might not be so lucky next time. I think night elves still need to undergo professional training to prevent scams. Many elves have stayed in the wind forest for too long, so they don't know how dangerous the world is. I'll discuss this with Ashley. Irina nodded. She felt that Meg's suggestion wasn't unreasonable, but she still looked at him, and asked, "What about the sixth elder of the Abyss Demon tribe?" "I went to test the gun. The accuracy is pretty good." "One shot to the head," Meg said with a smile. Rodu. Fepiter Manor. Father, the Carlett family came to discuss the marriage alliance again yesterday. Do you think it's time to let Luna come back? Derek asked the old man who was reading beside the stove. A few days ago, Luna wrote me a letter, saying that Hope School is about to be completed. The children should be starting school in a few days, Byron Fields said calmly without raising his head. As you know, this marriage has already been decided a long time ago. The Carlett family is quite influential in the royal court. Our family is already on the decline. If we can't rely on the Carlett family, I'm afraid that we will fall in a few generations, Derek said with a serious expression. Byron put down the book in his hand, and slowly raised his head to look at his son with a hint of disappointment and mockery. Derek was feeling a little uncomfortable under Byron's intense gaze, but he still gritted his teeth as he said, "I know you've always doted on Luna, but she's already at the marriageable age. You can't let her do as she pleases. I've watched Luna grow up, and everything she does is planned and targeted. She's never done anything stupid." Byron slammed the table, and his voice suddenly became cold and stern as he said, "But you, as her father, don't want to improve yourself. Instead, you want to use your daughter's marriage to exchange for a bright future and glory for the family. How dare you come here and say something like this to me?" Derek's expression changed drastically, and he lowered his head. Nya didn't dare to say anything. Luna is teaching in Chaos City, and she's nurtured so many children. Now, she's even established Hope School and recruited 3,000 students from poor families. She's doing so much good, and you want her to come back and marry that good-for-nothing from the Carlett family? Byron looked at Derek coldly, and said, "You want a bright future for a spineless father like you?" "Father. I'm doing this for the future of our family, shut up." Byron interrupted Derek's words with a cold voice, exasperatedly saying, "If the Febid family is going to fall to a lowly level where they have to rely on women to marry for their future, then it's only natural that they fall. What's the point of maintaining this false prosperity? Then what about the Carlett family? Reject them. Tell them that Luna's marriage is her own decision, and no one has the right to interfere," Byron said in a firm voice. Derek looked at Byron, and heaved an internal sigh as he said, "Yes." This was the first time in many years that he had seen his father so angry, and his words were so harsh. "Also, I've already applied for leave. I'm going to Chaos City tomorrow morning to witness Luna's Hope School opening ceremony," Byron added. "I'll make the arrangements right away." Derek extended a curtsy before hurrying out of the room. There was clearly no room for negotiation, and Derek was beginning to have a headache about how to negotiate with the Carlett family about the annulment of the engagement. Originally, the Carlett family had already promised him that as long as the two families became in-laws, he would be able to take on the position of assistant finance minister after the marriage. Now, what he needed to consider was how to appease the Carlett family and maintain his current position. Sigh. A grown woman can't be kept at home. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have let her go to Chaos City. Derek heaved a forlorn sigh. Chapter 2300. Before Meg went to bed, he suddenly thought of another important matter. He had promised Gina that he would go to Lantis to investigate the sea god's ruins. What's wrong with my memory recently? Meg patted his head. He felt that the brain he was so proud of might have been eaten by Irina's zombies recently. Due to the urgency of the situation, he had to go to the old site of Lantist with Gina in addition to attending Hope Academy's opening ceremony tomorrow. He was still quite interested in the sea god's ruins. Hope Academy. The teacher's office was still brightly lit. Principal, the last student has completed the registration. There are a total of 3,216 students, and all of them have completed their registration today. It's exactly the same as the previous statistics. Mary and Hilla carried a stack of documents into the office with smiles on their faces. Luna put the letter in her hand into the drawer, and stood up with a smile. Thank you for your hard work. It's not hard at all. It's such a great achievement to be able to let so many children go to school. I don't feel tired at all. Hilla couldn't hide her tiredness, but her smile was still very contagious. Yes. I wasn't sure before, but after seeing the parents and children who came to register today, I realized that their situation was more difficult than I expected. It's really great to be able to let them go to school and learn. Mary nodded. She was deeply touched by today's experience. Luna looked at the two of them with a smile. They were both young ladies, and their drive was exactly the same as when she first came to Chaos Academy. She nodded and said, "Leave the documents there. Go back and rest first. You still have to prepare for the opening ceremony tomorrow morning." "All right. Principal, you should go back and rest early too. You're much more tired than us." Hilla put the documents down, and left with Mary arm in arm. They were even discussing if they should go to Mana Hot Pot restaurant for supper when they went out. Luna put the documents back into the bookcase, and sat down again. She pulled open the drawer, and looked at the letter from Rhoda silently for a while. She reached out to tear the letter into pieces, and threw it into the rubbish bin. Grandfather had taught her since she was young to put things where they should be. This was a good habit. What did it have to do with her if someone else agreed to an engagement? If she wanted to get married, she would let the person who agreed to marry her. She didn't have the time to care about the interests of those big families. There were 3,216 children here who chose Hope Academy because they trusted her. How could she let them down? As for her family, as long as she didn't reply, she would just pretend that she didn't receive this letter and didn't know about it. Even though the Carrot family was quite influential in Rhodu, their influence didn't extend to Chaos City, so she wasn't worried that they would dare to come here and kidnap her. Rhodu, Lunto to the Academy, Looney to the Chaos Academy to hell, Luns to Lunas to hell, it's very simple. Find a man from Chaos City and marry him. Then, everything will be fine. Vivian appeared at the door with one hand propped against the door, and looked at Luna with a smile. Luna was slightly startled, and hurriedly pulled Vivian into the room. Before closing the door, she took a quick glance at the corridor outside, and heaved a sigh of relief after making sure that no one was there. "Why are you being so secretive? I'm not here to have an affair with you." Vivian raised Luna's chubby chin with a smile, and said, "Why don't you submit to me?" "Piss off." Luna slapped Vivian's hand away with a roll of her eyes. Vivian sat down on a nearby chair, and looked at the torn letter in the trash bin with a smile as she asked, "What's wrong? Is your father urging you to marry that good-for-nothing from the Carlett family again? Every time he writes to me, he doesn't have anything else to say apart from this." Luna pursed her lips with a resigned expression as she said, "He says that the wedding date is almost here, and he wants me to return to Rhodu immediately. Otherwise, he'll come and capture me personally." "What kind of father is that?" Vivian raised her eyebrows and glared at her. She indignantly asked, "Then, what are you going to do? Hope School has just opened. Even if I'm willing to marry that fellow, I can't leave now. Furthermore, I don't want to marry a man whom I've only met twice and have never interacted with before. Furthermore, he has a very bad reputation." Luna shook her head with a determined gaze. I'm not going back. I support you. Vivian grabbed her hand and seriously said, I'll look for my father when I get home tonight. As long as you stay in Chaos City, no one can take you away if you don't want to leave. Even your biological father can't do anything about it. Luna hugged Vivian tightly with a smile and said, Good sister, I'll treat you to hot pot in a few days. There's no time like the present. Let's do it today. Your work should be done by now, right? I'm hungry now. Let's go to Mana Hot Pot restaurant for a meal. You can sleep at my place tonight, and come to work together tomorrow morning. Vivian held Luna's hand, and was about to walk out. Now. Luna hesitated. Isn't it too late? It's only 9 a.m. It's still very early. Mana Hot Pot restaurant closes at 12 a.m., so it's just right to eat now. Vivian took a coat from the side and put it on Luna. She opened the door and said, Our principal Luna has just completed a huge goal in her life. It's time to celebrate. Luna looked at Vivian with a gentle smile in her eyes. Only real sisters would know what they wanted. Oh, yes. Are you really not going to consider my suggestion just now? I think Mr. Mac is quite a nice person. If you marry him, we can go straight back to Amy's. We can even eat the hot pot and grilled fish prepared by Mr. Mac himself. That's perfect, Vivian suggested seriously. Luna was so angry that she laughed. Then, why don't you marry him yourself? He can even warm your bed when you go home. I want to, too. But as a sister, how can I steal someone else's love? That's immoral. Vivian shook her head as a matter of course. She leaned close to Luna's ear and whispered, Mr. Mac will warm your bed. Are you really not moved at all? Luna's ears turned red immediately. She let go of Vivian's hand and turned her face away. If you keep talking, I won't go with you. All right. I won't make fun of the principal anymore. Let's go quickly. Vivian smiled and pulled Luna out of the door. They got into the carriage that was waiting outside the school gate and left. Mana Hot Pot restaurant was still brightly lit in the middle of the night. The huge hall on the first floor was almost full of people. They were drinking, bragging, and having hot pot. It was quite lively. Vivian brought Luna up to the second floor with ease. They found a secluded private room, and the two sisters enjoyed this rare supper time alone. Chapter 23:01. The next morning, the girls at Mamie's were woken up by the alarm clock. They woke up in a daze and saw Meg's thoughtful greeting, "Good morning, working day." The girls stood in the living room in silence for a while, their expressions a little strange. However, just as they finished washing up and went out in the cold wind, they saw a small blackboard hanging on the door of Mamie's. Today off. Everyone. This. Did boss write it yesterday and forget to take it down? Mia frowned. But boss never hangs a blackboard on a day off. Phyllis shook her head. But he just took a day off yesterday. Why is he taking a day off today? Gina asked curiously. Before they could mutter the truth, the door of the restaurant opened. Meg stood at the door and said with a smile, "Since you're all here, come in and have breakfast. I forgot to inform you yesterday that Hope School is starting today. I have to attend the opening ceremony, so I'm taking a day off in the restaurant." Everyone suddenly realized that Meg still had another identity, a teacher. "Can we attend the ceremony?" Mia asked. "I can bring you in later. There's a viewing area for parents." Meg nodded with a smile. Amy came down from upstairs. Wearing Hope School's new uniform, she happily jumped in front of Meg. Father, do you think my uniform is nice? Yes, it's very nice. Meg nodded with a smile. Hope School's uniform was donated by Gloria. There were 2 sets of winter and summer clothes. The style was simpler, with bright red and blue colors. However, the cotton-padded clothes were thick enough to keep them warm, and the pants were enough to satisfy the children's active habits. Meg didn't participate in the design of the uniform. It was said that Gloria completed it alone. It was obvious that she put in a lot of effort. Amy chose to transfer to Hope School. Meg helped her with the transfer procedures 2 days ago. With her qualifications, she did not meet the requirements for free admission, so Meg paid the tuition fee of 3,000 copper coins and went home to eat, so there was no food expenses. This was what Meg and Luna had discussed before. Hope School's initial position was a charity school, but that didn't stop them from building it into the #1 school on the Norland continent. Hence, for children from poor families in Chaos City, they would always implement a free admission policy. However, for those who came from good families and passed Hope Academy's test, they would have to pay tuition fees every semester. Relying on the charity funds to maintain the school's operations was not a long-term solution. Furthermore, the teachers in Hope School were treated just as well as those in Chaos City. Without the City Lord's castle to back them up, they had to find a source of income. By improving the quality of education and increasing the reputation of Hope School, more parents would want to send their children to Hope School to study. This would naturally increase the capital chain of Hope School. But after I attend the opening ceremony at Hope School today, I still have to go to Chaos School for lessons. Teacher Crassus said that the magic classroom can't be moved there for the time being, Amy said helplessly. It's okay. Daddy will send you there later. Meg patted Amy's head with a smile, and called everyone over for breakfast. The opening ceremony started at 8 a.m. Meg and the others set off for Hope School after breakfast. At the entrance of Hope School, children in brand new uniforms walked into the school with smiles on their faces, accompanied by their parents. These children were of different ages. Some looked to be 4 or 5 years old, while others looked to be 13 or 14 years old. However, their eyes shone with the same light. Meg stopped in his tracks unconsciously. He looked at the children with tears in his eyes. After coming to this world, he had done many things. However, what made him feel like he had done a good deed was watching these children walk into the school with their school bags. He had seen some information about the children at Luna's place. Some of them were already digging coal in the mines at a young age, some were forced to beg on the streets, and some had already learned how to steal from other people's pockets and reap without sowing. Luna and the teachers of Hope School found them one by one, and brought them back to Hope School. Energetic children. School is indeed the best place. I'm so envious. Yabamiya looked at the children walking into the school with admiration. If I was born a few years later, I should be able to go to school too. Elizabeth held her hand gently. You can sit in on my classes any time in the future. Meg looked at her with a smile. Really? Yabamiya's eyes lit up. Of course. Meg nodded. Thank you, boss. Yabamiya was so happy that she almost jumped up. Now, she could make up for her regret of not going to school. Meg and the rest walked to the gate. Meg, Gina, Vivian, and Shirley all had employee passes. They could enter the school after showing their passes. These are my family members. They would like to watch the opening ceremony. Can I let them go to the viewing area? Meg discussed with the guard. The guard recognized Meg. He sized up the group of beautiful girls standing at the gate when he heard that. His expression immediately became one of admiration when he looked at Meg. He gave him a thumbs up and said, "The younger generation will surpass us in time. Let's go in." Meg was a little confused by the guard's random words. However, he still asked the girls to enter through the gate and head to the viewing area from the left. Gina, I'll accompany you to the sea god's ruins after the opening ceremony. Meg found an opportunity to speak to Gina alone. Gina looked at Meg in surprise, but she still nodded quickly. Everyone had a great time yesterday. She thought Meg had forgotten about it, so she didn't mention it. She didn't expect him to say that he wanted to accompany her today. Meg brought Gina and the rest to the teachers' area. The teachers were all dressed rather elegantly today. They stood about a meter apart in front of the rostrum. Even the retired teachers were all standing tall and straight, displaying the elegance of Hope School's teachers. The students reported to their classrooms first, and then lined up to the field under the lead of their respective form teachers. Just like Chaos School, Hope School's classes were divided according to their stage of study, and not according to their race. Hence, students from different races could be seen in any class. Although they were of different sizes, and the lines looked uneven, the atmosphere was very harmonious. Amy is over there, Barbara reminded Meg. Meg had already noticed the two children, Amy and Jessica, who were holding hands. The two little ones stood at the front of the line, and attracted a lot of attention as they walked over. That little elf is so cute. So is the little girl beside her. Yeah, they're so small. They look like they're only 4 or 5 years old. It's so nice to be young. Chapter 2302. A thin crack appeared on the eggshell, and then quickly spread to the entire egg. Before Meg and the rest could react, pieces of the cracked eggshell fell off, leaving behind a translucent membrane. A small figure could be vaguely seen in the translucent membrane. It was half human and half fish. The aura of life suddenly became denser as if it was going to break out of the shell. Countless space cracks appeared around the eggshell, but none of them could get close to the egg that was only left with a thin membrane. Meg held his sword, and was a little hesitant about whether he should strike first to gain the upper hand. Gina suddenly took a step forward, and stood between Meg and the egg. She looked at Meg earnestly, and said, I can feel kindness and closeness from it. Even if it's not the sea god, it should be an existence related to Lantist. Please don't hurt it. Meg thought for a while, and put down his sword. He nodded slightly, and said, If anything happens, I will bring you away from here immediately. All right. Gina nodded. Right at this moment, the crystal ball in Gina's hand suddenly shone brightly, and flew towards the egg out of Gina's control. Gina looked at this scene nervously. The sea god's pearl had never acted like this before. At least, in the records of Lantist, there had never been any mysterious giant egg. What exactly was this mysterious giant egg that appeared in the sea god's ruins? What was its relationship with the sea god and Lantist? Why did it cause the sea god's pearl to act strangely? The answer was in this thing that was about to break out of the shell. Knock, knock. The sea god's pearl stopped in front of the eggshell, and knocked against the thin eggshell slightly, making 2 knocks that sounded like someone was knocking on a door. A small hole suddenly appeared at the place where it knocked against the eggshell, and a small finger reached out. That was a white, tender, and short finger. It poked at the air, and then made a circle before swiping downwards. Slash! The thin eggshell was easily sliced open like a piece of paper. The eggshell split into 2 and fell to the sides. A little mermaid stumbled out of the eggshell. Yes, it was an extremely small mermaid. It looked like it was only 2 years old. It had a beautiful blue tail and slightly curly blue hair. Its facial features were delicate and cute. Its eyes were half closed and it was swaying. It tried to use its 2 fins to stabilize itself, but it could not control its body. It was like a little chick that had just come out of its eggshell. "Oh my God, she's so cute." Gina looked at the little mermaid in surprise. She had never expected that a little mermaid would emerge from the eggshell, and that she would be so cute. The little mermaid opened her eyes as if she had heard the sound. Her gaze landed on Gina. It was a pair of clear and bright blue eyes. They were like the deep blue ocean, and there was light shining there. "Mother," the little mermaid let out a muffled voice as she stumbled toward Gina. Gina opened her arms instinctively, took 2 steps forward, and hugged her. The little fellow raised his fair little hands and cupped her face. His little mouth pouted as he planted a kiss on her cheek. Then, he let out a giggle. "System, what kind of species is this? Are mermaids born from eggs?" Meg put away the Tian-Du sword. He did not sense any evil aura or evil intent from the little mermaid. The system was silent. Bang! At this moment, the sea god's pearl suddenly exploded and turned into a ray of blue light that surged toward Gina. Meg frowned slightly, but he took a step back in the end. He did not choose to draw his sword. The blue light engulfed Gina and turned into rays of materialized energy that surged into her body. Gina hugged the little mermaid with a dazed expression. She could feel the energy in her body increasing rapidly. Her understanding of the water element was also increasing at an unbelievable speed. 3 minutes later, the blue light disappeared. A blue trident mark appeared between Gina's brows, but it quickly faded and disappeared. As the mark disappeared, Gina's aura also climbed to the pinnacle of level 10 in an instant. Me? Gina was in disbelief. She had only broken through to the 9th tier less than a year ago. How did she suddenly become a 10th tier powerhouse? Furthermore, some powerful magic spells appeared in her mind. They were not the magic that she inherited from Lantist. They were the more powerful kind. Is this the sea god's gift? Meg looked at the little mermaid in Gina's arms thoughtfully. He had some guesses in his heart. Mother! 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 The little mermaid called out happily. She seemed to have become even closer and more fond of Gina. Gina looked at the child in her arms embarrassedly, and explained, I am not your. Meg took a step forward and pressed his hand on her shoulder gently. He shook his head slightly, and said, let's take this child away. Gina was deep in thought after hearing that. Although this little fellow looked smart, she was still a newborn. Obviously, they could not leave her in these dangerous ruins. If they brought her out of the sea god's ruins and back to Chaos City, she would definitely have to continue raising her. It would be troublesome if she did not have a proper identity. Looking at the little fellow's adorable appearance and the closeness that came from the bottom of her heart, she was also a little moved. There were only 2 mermaids on the Norland continent. Good girl. Gina smiled and kissed the little fellow's cheek. She pondered, and said, then, Mother will give you a name. I'll call you Little Guai. Little Guai. Little Guai. Little Guai. The little fellow repeated softly with happiness written all over her little face. Little Guai. That's a random name. Meg raised his brow. However, looking at the little fellow's happy face, she was indeed quite obedient. Little Guai turned to look at Meg, and raised her little hand as she called out, Father. Hug. And no, I'm not your father. This time, it was Meg's turn to be stunned. It would be fine if he was a single, outstanding young man. He could just be a father. However, he had a family now, and 2 daughters. He could not just go out and be a father. Little Guai pouted, and murmured aggrievedly, if you don't hug, Little Guai will cry. Tears were already rolling in the little fellow's big, watery eyes. She was about to cry. Her white, chubby, and short arms were raised to ask for a hug, and that made Meg break down instantly. I can't take it anymore. Okay. Hug. Meg took the little fellow from Gina's arms helplessly, and put on the little dress that the system had just sent to the little fellow. Meg was not too surprised that the little fellow could speak as soon as she broke out of her shell. After all, in comparison, it was obviously more miraculous to let a 9th-tier magic caster become a 10th-tier magic caster instantly. If this little fellow was the reincarnation of the sea god, then everything would make sense. Daddy's restaurant in the alternate world will continue to be updated in the handwriting bar. Chapter 2303. 10 minutes later, Gina turned in Meg's direction. She patted the submarine and said, "Boss, the ruins are in this direction. Let's go." You lead the way." Meg nodded. He steered the submarine, and followed behind Gina, who had transformed into a mermaid. They moved along the bottom of the sea, and finally stopped at the edge of the ruins of Lantis. Meg sized up the surroundings. The sea was empty, and there was nothing special on the ground. This was the so-called entrance to the sea god's ruins. Meg got used to the sudden increase in pressure after coming out of the submarine. His bones made a few cracking sounds as he resisted the pressure forcefully. Other than special times, only the sea god's pearl can make the entrance to the sea god's ruins appear. Hence, the people in the underground city shouldn't have discovered it. Gina's voice sounded as the sea god's pearl appeared in her palm. A dash of blue light lit up. There seemed to be a mermaid's shadow spinning and dancing in the sea god's pearl. The bottom of the sea trembled slightly, and a glittering golden door suddenly appeared in the water in front of them. It was a 10-meter-tall golden door with an ancient design. There were countless mysterious words carved on it, and there were 2 mermaid guardians holding golden harpoons on the left and right sides. Meg finally understood why Rankster viewed the sea god as his religion. After all, the mermaids looked like the left and right guardians on this door, guarding this door of the ruins. Gina tilted her head to look at Meg, and said, "Boss, I haven't entered the sea god's ruins before. I don't know if it will reject you. Don't worry. It's just an ancient ruin. The older something is, the more powerful it is. This has always been a strange theory." Meg shook his head with a smile. He only believed that the older something was, the more powerful it was. For example, the Great Old Ones. Even the Great Old Ones had become more powerful through the development of technology. Gina nodded, and slowly pushed the sea god's pearl in her hand forward. The sea god's pearl emitted a dazzling blue light, and landed in a small hole in the middle of the golden door. It was like a key that was perfectly inserted. The closed golden door opened inward slowly, and revealed a mysterious entrance that was as black as ink. Meg glanced at it. His divine sense was like a clay ox entering the sea. He couldn't see what was behind the door. "Come, let's go in and take a look." Meg grabbed Gina's hand, and stepped into that mysterious space. A blue light flashed, and Meg grabbed Gina with one hand and the Tian-Du sword with the other. After a short moment's discomfort, they realized they were standing on top of an altar. This was not the bottom of the sea, but the sky was exceptionally pale. There were no clouds or sun, only whiteness. It was like a uniformly painted white canvas covering the sky. There was no other color. Apart from white, there was no other color, there was no other color. Other than white, there was no other color. There was no other color. Others as the others. It was as if a fierce battle had taken place here, and everything had been destroyed. S's ruins, S. The surroundings were silent. Looking at this broken world, it seemed a little strange. Be careful. Meg suddenly pulled Gina into his arms. A pitch-black space crack appeared where she was standing. It was an arm-length crack that looked like a zipper. It had appeared silently and looked harmless to humans and animals. Meg moved his feet slightly, and a millstone-sized marble flew toward the crack. The marble crashed into the pitch-black crack. It was as though it had crashed into countless invisible sharp blades. It was instantly cut into powder, and then absorbed by the crack. There was no sound during the whole process. The space crack still looked harmless. Gina swallowed her saliva, and burrowed deeper into Meg's arms. Master didn't lie to her. It was too scary. She felt safer around Boss. All right, I'll keep an eye on the space crack for you. Take a look at the sea god's pearl first. Meg reminded Gina, who was clinging onto his body. This lass liked to wrap her legs around people's bodies when her legs appeared. Oh. Gina stood properly again, and took out the sea god's pearl that had returned to her. After entering the sea god's ruins, the blue light spot in the sea god's pearl became brighter. A small arrow appeared in the crystal ball, and it seemed to be guiding them. Since there's a guide, let's go and see what it is. Meg hugged Gina's waist with one hand, and ran forward with the navigation. The interior of the sea god's ruins was very spacious. Meg and the rest left the altar through which they were teleported. They passed through a large stretch of ruins and avoided countless space cracks that suddenly appeared. Finally, they stopped at a place that looked like an arena. The arena was paved with white marble, and there were pits of various sizes everywhere. However, from the scale of the arena, Meg could still feel the power of the person who had once controlled this place. Gina's mouth was also slightly agape. She looked at the huge arena in front of her in shock. The blue light spot was no longer moving, and the arrow had disappeared. This meant that they had reached the location that the sea god's pearl wanted them to reach. What's that? Meg lifted his long sword and pointed at a blue egg on the high platform in the middle of the arena. It was an oval-shaped egg that was half a meter tall. It was emitting a blue glow, and the eggshell was densely covered with mysterious patterns. It looked like it was naturally formed. Meg and Gina came before it, and sized up the huge egg before them. The unusual movement of the sea god's pearl seemed to be caused by this egg. It looks like it's alive, Gina said softly. She couldn't hide her astonishment. It's alive. Meg nodded to confirm her words. He could feel weak signs of life from this egg, which meant that this egg was alive. An egg with signs of life had appeared in a ruin that had been left behind for an unknown number of years. This was undoubtedly strange. Could it be the sea god? Gina's eyes lit up, and she asked Meg. Compared to the sea god, the possibility of it being the Great Old One is higher. Meg gripped his long sword tightly, and looked at that egg cautiously. Although he couldn't be sure that the owner of this ruin was the sea god that the Lantistians worshipped, he could be sure that this place used to be a powerful force. Perhaps their ruler really had the power of a god. However, this place was still destroyed. The entire small world was destroyed. The only one who could do all this, and was passionate about doing it, was the Great Old One. Countless years had passed, and something with signs of life had appeared in this ruin. Compared to the sea god, he was more inclined to believe that the Great Old One was immortal. Crack. A crack appeared on the eggshell. Chapter 2304. On the way back, Meg carefully observed little Guai, who was braiding Zi's hair. The little fellow's temperament was similar to a 2-year-old who had just learned how to walk and talk. She was curious about everything and had a desire to express herself. She was very smart and a genius at languages. She asked a lot of questions along the way, and soon mastered a good vocabulary. "Come here, little Guai." Gina smiled and waved. "Wait. Wait a minute." Little Guai tied the 8th braid into a knot and put it down gently. She looked at the 4 pairs of braids that were neatly tied, and nodded with satisfaction. Then, she got up and walked toward Gina. She jumped into her arms. "Are you hungry?" Gina hugged her gently. "Hungry?" Little Guai looked at her curiously with her eyes wide open. "Do you want to eat?" Gina touched her stomach and said with a smile, "Is your stomach growling?" "Growl, growl." Little Guai's stomach growled cooperatively. She nodded with a smile. "It's growling. Little Guai wants to eat. Little Guai is hungry." "Do you need milk when you're just born?" Meg asked casually. "Little Guai wants milk. Little Guai wants milk." Little Guai immediately nodded and looked at Gina. Gina blushed immediately. She didn't have milk either. Meg also realized that he seemed to be stirring up trouble. Although little Guai was born, Gina didn't really give birth to her. How could she have milk? Moreover, wasn't she oviparous? How could she be breastfeeding? Host, you're a little ignorant. On Earth, oviparous mammals exist. The platypus is one of them. On the Nora continent, it's not surprising that a mammalian magical beast exists. The system's voice sounded in his mind. Meg didn't want to pay attention to the system's nonsense. He looked at little Guai with a smile and said, "Little Guai, open your mouth and let me see." "Ah." Little Guai opened her mouth obediently, and revealed 2 rows of neat and shiny teeth. At a glance, there were already 20 of them. "Well, our Xiao Guai's teeth are all grown out, so he doesn't need to drink milk anymore. When we get home, he can eat meat directly," Meg said as he patted the little guy's head. "Little meaty." Little Guai revealed a curious expression. "Meat, meat, it's delicious. Wait a little longer, we'll be home soon. When we get home, I'll cook for you." Okay. Little Guai wants to eat father's meat." Little Guai nodded. "It's father's meat, not father's meat," Meg corrected. Half an hour later, Ozzy landed outside Chaos City. Meg brought Gina and Xiao Guai out of the mountain. Then, they rode their bicycles into the city slowly. Wow! What a big house! Xiao Guai, who was sitting in the basket of the bicycle, looked up at the towering city wall with surprise on its little face. "Little Guai, this is Chaos City. We'll be living here from now on," Meg introduced with a smile. "Chaos City. Little Guai likes it here." Little Guai said with a nod. After passing through the city gate, Meg introduced everything that they saw along the way to little Guai. He said a lot, and little Guai listened attentively. Occasionally, he would ask 1 or 2 interesting questions. Gina sat in the back seat of the bicycle, and put her arm around Meg's waist gently. She was in a wonderful mood. Is this the feeling of a family? Gina thought to herself as she blushed. However, when she thought about how she was going to explain to everyone when they got back to the restaurant, she blushed even more. "We're home." Meg supported the bicycle with his long legs. He pointed at the signboard on the door and said, "Look, little Guai. This is our home, Mamie's." "Mamie. Restaurant." Little Guai repeated after him. Then, he happily said, "Our home is so nice. It's much nicer than their home. You have good taste. Come, let's go home." Meg alighted, and carried little Guy out of the bicycle basket. "Let me carry him." Gina went forward to take the child. Meg parked the bicycle at the door, and went to open the door to go in. Little Guy placed one hand on Gina's shoulder, and looked around the restaurant curiously. Meow, ugly duckling, who was lying on the counter and taking a nap, stretched. It opened its eyes in a daze, and meowed. Meow, meow. Little Guy's gaze landed on Ugly Duckling immediately. Ugly Duckling seemed to have been stared at by something scary. It stood up all over, and stared at Little Guy in Gina's arms. It took 2 steps back, and fell off the counter with a plop. He, stupid meow, Little Guy giggled. Meg and Gina couldn't help but laugh when they saw that. Ugly Duckling poked half of its head out from behind the counter, and used one eye to observe secretly. Ugly Duckling has always been fearless. It even dared to take a nap in front of a 10th-tier powerhouse. Now, it has met its nemesis, Meg said with a smile. "Mother, I want to go down." "I want to play with Little Meow," Little Guy said. "Go on. Be careful. Don't scare it. It's little Amy's pet." Gina put Little Guy down with a smile. "Little Meow, come out and play with me." Little Guy ran to the counter with its short legs as soon as it landed. Meow, Ugly Duckling darted out from under the counter instantly. It climbed up the beam in 3 steps, leaped onto the roof, and vaulted over the wall. It reached the pillar at the top right corner of the restaurant in a second, and laid down on its stomach as it looked at Little Guy warily. Meg was a little shocked. Ugly Duckling's speed was no longer as lazy as it usually was. Its speed was comparable to that of a 5th-tier magic beast. Little Guy looked around before finding Ugly Duckling, who was squatting on a high spot. It put its hands on its waist and pouted. "Little Meow, come down. Be good." Ugly Duckling retracted its head and hid directly. It didn't look like it was going to come down at all. Meg looked at the clock on the wall. It was 4 in the afternoon. "Shit, I forgot to fetch Amy." Meg slapped his thigh, and turned to go out. "Father, I'm back." Before Meg could go out, Amy had already pushed open the door with her little school bag, and came in with a bounce. Little Guy turned around, and its big blue eyes lit up when it saw Amy, who had just jumped in. Amy also noticed Little Guy, who was standing in the middle of the restaurant. Her little face was shocked at first, but it quickly turned into a pleasant surprise. Her blue eyes curved slightly as she looked up at Meg, and asked, "Father, whose cutie is this?" Meg smiled, and said, "Ours." "This is Little Guy." "Ours? Little Guy. This cute little sister is really ours." Amy's mouth was slightly agape with a look of disbelief. "This is too awesome. I have a little sister too." Amy tossed her school bag onto the table beside her, and ran over to Little Guy with her arms wide open. She picked up Little Guy, who was waiting to be hugged. Big sister." Little Guy looked at Amy, and called out in a mellow voice. End of chapter. Chapter 2305. So obedient. Amy agreed. She kissed little Cutie's tender cheeks and stroked her soft blue hair. She liked her even more. She had a sister now. It was her own sister. Such an obedient and adorable little sister would definitely be fun to play with. Meg looked at this scene with gratification. 2 adorable little fellows. What a loving scene. Meow. Ugly Duckling tilted its head and looked at this scene in bewilderment. Why is little mistress hugging that dangerous fellow? Stupid meow meow. Little cutie looked up and pouted. Ugly duckling, how did you get up there? Amy looked up at Ugly Duckling, who was squatting on the tall pillar, with a hint of surprise. The round Ugly Duckling usually had trouble even climbing up the counter. How did it get up to the highest pillar in the restaurant? It was scared by Little Cutie, Gina said with a smile. Amy's eyes lit up. I see. Then I'll get Little Cutie to supervise Ugly Duckling's weight loss. The results will definitely be very good. Ugly Duckling. Ugly Duckling, come down. Amy waved her hand. Ugly Duckling stared at Little Cutie warily for a while before slipping down the pillar unwillingly. It raised its tail and crawled to Amy's side as it meowed weakly. Little Cutie, this is Ugly Duckling. Amy put Little Cutie down and hugged the chubby Ugly Duckling. Ugly Duckling. Duck duck. Meow meow. Little Cutie looked at Ugly Duckling curiously. It reached out its chubby little hand and tiptoed towards Ugly Duckling's head. Ugly Duckling's fur stood on end. Its body was already slightly arched as if it was going to go berserk at any time. Smack! Little Cutie's hand smacked Ugly Duckling's head. Be good. If you're not, I'll smack your head crooked. Little Cutie said the harshest words in the softest and cutest tone. This slap wasn't heavy. Coupled with that soft little hand, it could even be said to be a light touch. However, Ugly Duckling, which was on the verge of going berserk, became obedient with this slap. The cat's bristling fur immediately became soft. It lowered its head and laid down obediently, as if it had accepted its fate and could be caressed at will. Very good. That's how it should be. Amy looked at Xiao Guai with satisfaction, as if she had discovered some commonality between them. Ding! New quest, newcomer Xiao Guai. Little Master, please lead Xiao Guai to familiarize herself with her new home, so that she can better integrate into her new environment. Moreover, you can obtain more than 90 points of favorable impression from Xiao Guai. The reward for the mission will be determined by the degree of completion of the mission. At this moment, the system's voice suddenly sounded in Amy's mind. What a simple mission. Isn't that what I'm about to do? Amy placed Ugly Duckling on the ground, and held Little Guai's hand. Let's go, Little Guai. I'll show you around our home. Okay. Little Guai nodded obediently and followed Amy to familiarize herself with the restaurant. Gina, why don't you rest for a while? I'll go make some food for Xiao Guai. Meg poured a glass of water for Gina, and went upstairs to take a quick shower. Then, he changed into a chef's suit and went into the kitchen to cook for Xiao Guai. Xiao Guai's teeth were already fully grown, and he had heard her crunching on the mint candy along the way. Her bite strength should be pretty good, so there was no need to specially make soft food for her. For the little fellow's first meal, Meg wanted her to have a lighter meal, so he made a plate of Yangzhou fried rice for her. When Meg came out of the kitchen with 2 plates of fried rice, Xiao Guai was riding on Amy's little wooden horse in the dining room. Amy was holding many toys in her arms, and was introducing them to her. It was the first time the 2 sisters met. The atmosphere was pretty good, and they got along very well. All right, Xiao Guai, come and wash your hands. Let's eat, Meg said with a smile. Let's go. Big sister will take you to wash your hands. You have to wash your hands before eating. That way, you won't have diarrhea. Amy held Xiao Guai's hand and walked towards the kitchen. Little Amy likes Xiao Guai a lot, Gina said with a smile. She always said she wanted a younger sister. Now that her dream has come true, of course she likes her, Meg also said with a smile. Where's Anne? Isn't she at home? Gina asked again. Yeah, she probably went out to draw. She's not in the room. Meg nodded. And had been going out to draw a lot recently. Other people's picture books could no longer satisfy her learning needs. Every time she came back from outside, she would bring back a stack of sketches. Amy came out of the kitchen with Xiao Guai. She glanced at the 2 plates of fried rice on the table, and smiled at Meg. "Father, do I get a plate too?" "Yes, Meg, eat something first. We'll eat together later." Meg nodded with a smile. "Okay." Amy smiled and climbed up to her personal seat. Gina carried Xiao Guai to her little chair. "Good wine." Xiao Guai looked at the colorful fried rice on the plate, and her eyes lit up. "This is rainbow fried rice. Father made it. It's very, very delicious," Amy introduced to her. "It's very, very delicious," Xiao Guai repeated. "Then let's eat." Amy picked up the spoon, scooped a spoonful of fried rice, and put it into her mouth. Her cheeks were slightly puffed up, and she chewed happily. Xiao Guai stared at Amy for a while. Then, she picked up the little spoon in front of her and scooped up a bit of fried rice clumsily. She tried her best to raise her little hand and put the spoon into her mouth. Although half of the fried rice was spilled on the table, it was the first time she tasted food. Xiao Guai's big blue eyes lit up immediately, as if she had tasted something incredible. The fragrant and sweet rice wrapped in eggs, accompanied by the wonderful taste of various ingredients, and the fragrance of the water of life. It was a taste she had never tasted before. "It's so delicious." Xiao Guai looked at Meg, nodded her little head, and said, "Father made the super delicious rainbow fried rice. Eat more if it's delicious." Meg wiped the rice off her face with a smile. Xiao Guai moved the plate closer to her. Then, she bent down and put her mouth in front of the plate. She used the spoon to slowly scoop a mouthful of fried rice into her mouth. This time, not a single grain of rice fell on the table. "Xiao Guai is so smart," Amy praised. She didn't teach Xiao Guai to eat like that. Xiao Guai's cheeks were puffed up. She chewed quickly like a cute little squirrel. She looked a little similar to how Amy ate. Meg and Gina couldn't hide their smiles. Amy finished a bowl of fried rice first. Then, she gently placed the spoon on the clean plate. She looked at Meg curiously, and asked, "Father, is Xiao Guai your and sister Gina's child? Was she just born today?" Meg didn't know how to answer his daughter's soul interrogation. Gina's face was also slightly red. She tilted her head slightly and pursed her lips without saying anything. Chapter 23:06. Little Guai slowly stopped chewing. She held the spoon in one hand and looked at Meg curiously as well. Compared to being worried about Amy taking notes, Meg didn't want little Guai's feelings to be hurt. He could only force himself to nod, and said, "Yes, I'm little Guai's father. Gina is her mother. Today is her egg hatching day." Egg hatching. Did Xiao Guai and Ugly Duckling come out of their eggshells at the same time? Amy's eyes widened with shock. "Yes." Meg nodded with a smile. "Then will little Guai grow wings when she grows up?" "I don't think so. It's okay. When little Guai grows up, I can teach her to fly," Amy said with a smile. "Fei. I like to fly," little Guai said with a nod. "Little Guai, continue eating. When you're done, we can have an ice cream," Amy said as she patted her head. "Okay," little Guai answered obediently, and continued to eat her fried rice. "You can only have one ice cream. I'm going to cook. Tell me if you want to eat anything else." Meg stood up and walked to the kitchen. he was going to start cooking dinner. He still had to entertain Luna's grandfather, Mr. Byron, later. Right at this moment, the sound of the door opening came from outside. The door to the restaurant was pushed open. Anne stood at the door with a sketchboard in her arms. Her gaze landed on little Guy, and she suddenly stopped in her tracks with a puzzled expression. The stack of sketches in her left hand fell to the ground. They were sketches of all kinds of people and scenes. Little Guy, who was enjoying her meal, suddenly turned around. She was stunned when she saw Anne standing at the door, and the spoon in her hand fell onto the table. "Little Guy, I'm scared." Little Guy slid down from the chair with a whoosh, and went straight into Gina's arms. She buried her head in her soft chest and shivered. "Little Guy, don't be scared. This is Big Sister Anne. She's not a bad person." Gina hugged little Guy, and patted her back gently to comfort her. However, she was a little surprised. Why would little Guy be scared when she saw Anne? Along the way, no matter what they saw, the little guy was full of curiosity and did not know what fear was. Meg looked at Anne, who was stunned at the door, and Xiao Guai, who was hiding in Gina's arms, not daring to poke its head out. While he was surprised, he also had some guesses. Anne was born from Cthulhu. Although she had become an independent individual, she still had the mark of the Great Old One. And Lil Guai might be the reincarnation of the sea god, so it should be a mortal enemy of the Great Old Ones. This hostility had already been imprinted in each other's souls, so when the young Xiao Guai saw Anne, it would instinctively reject her. However, because she was still too weak, this emotion turned into fear, which was also a form of protection for her. And didn't have much of a reaction. After being stunned for a short while, she returned to normal. She looked at Xiao Guai, who was hiding in Gina's arms, innocently and helplessly. Meg felt that it was a little too bold to take in a god and a Great Old One as daughters and raise them under the same roof. "You're back." Meg went forward to help pick up the drawing on the ground. He closed the door and introduced Xiao Guai to Anne with a smile. "This is Xiao Guai, the new member of our family. Sister Aunt Xiao Guai is super cute, but it seems a little shy," Amy said with a smile as she jumped off the chair. A smile also appeared on Annie's face. Her eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at Xiao Guai, who had buried his head in Gina's chest. However, she did not walk forward. She could feel that Xiao Guai did not seem to like her very much. Xiao Guai, this is Sister Anne. Hurry up and finish the remaining fried rice. I'll get you some ice cream, and then we'll look at the drawing that Sister Anne drew today," Amy said gently as she walked to Gina's side and shook Xiao Guai gently. Xiao Guai then slowly raised its head and poked half of its head out to look at Anne carefully. The black shadow disappeared, and it was a beautiful big sister. And gave her a warm smile. A smile also appeared on Xiao Guai's face, and it called out sweetly, "Sister Anne." However, Xiao Guai had no intention of getting down from Gina's chest. It took the plate and finished the remaining fried rice, and then refused to get down from Gina's chest. Although it didn't say anything, Meg could tell that Xiao Guai was still a little afraid of Anne. It was an instinct. Meg knew that it was impossible to get rid of it quickly. It could only be resolved slowly through interaction. Rest for a while. We'll eat in a while. Meg took Anne's drawing board and patted its head with a smile. He turned around and went into the kitchen. He said to Amy, "Go and ask the big sisters to come over for dinner. Introduce Xiao Guai to everyone." "Okay." Amy agreed and skipped out the door. "Sister Gina, is this your child?" And sat down opposite Gina and stared at Xiao Guai for a while. Then, she looked at Gina and asked with sign language. "Yes, Xiao Guai is my child." Gina nodded, and her tone was very firm. Is that father's child, too? And pointed at Meg in the kitchen. Gina looked in the direction of the kitchen, and her face flushed. She held it in for a while, but still nodded. This was too difficult to say. She wanted to run away with Xiao Guai when she thought of the same question and having to admit it to everyone later. There was nothing between him and Boss, but now there was a Xiao Guai. He wouldn't be able to explain himself even if he had a full mouth. And nodded thoughtfully. She noticed that Xiao Guai was staring at the drawings beside her. She smiled and pushed the whole stack of drawings in front of Xiao Guai. And went to the flower and bird market in the west of the city today. Gina said with a smile as she flipped through the drawings for Xiao Guai. There were all kinds of flowers, plants, birds, and animals in them. There were also many lively and interesting scenes. And nodded. So pretty, Xiao Guai praised softly as she looked at the drawings. Then, she pointed at a rooster and asked, "What's this?" "This is a rooster," Gina said. "Is it nice?" Xiao Guai asked again. Gina glanced at her. She had only played with Amy for a while, but her thinking had already been brought to the line of a foodie. "Yes, it's nice. It can be made into beggar's chicken or spicy diced chicken." Gina nodded with a smile. "I want to eat it." Xiao Guai looked at the big, arrogant rooster and swallowed her saliva. "Then I'll add a beggar's chicken for Xiao Guai tonight." Meg's voice came from the kitchen. Foodies were the easiest to satisfy. Meg was the least afraid of meeting a foodie. "Okay." Xiao Guai agreed happily. "What?" "Gina has a child. And it's with Boss." When did this happen? Why didn't we know anything?" "Boss is a beast. I was the one who came first." Before they entered the restaurant, shocked voices had already traveled into the restaurant through the door. Daddy's restaurant in the alternate world will continue to update in the bar. There are no advertisements on the website. Please bookmark and recommend the bar. If you like Daddy's Otherworld restaurant, please collect it. Daddy's Otherworld restaurant, please add it to your collection. Chapter 2307. Amy called all her sisters over. Everyone was very enthusiastic about having a meal. However, Amy only told them about Guai when they arrived at the entrance of the restaurant. Gina had a child. And it was with the boss. This shocking news made all the ladies explode. That's not right. Gina has only been in the restaurant for half a year. How can she have a child already? Yabamiya was puzzled. Could it be that mermaids have a shorter reproductive period and give birth in a few months? Angela guessed. After all, we succubi only need 6 months to give birth. But Gina usually stays with us every day, and she doesn't seem to be very intimate with the boss. Are you guys finished? When Gina first came to the restaurant, she stayed alone on the second floor for a while. Could it be that the boss is a beast? All the ladies were burning with curiosity. They pushed the door open and entered. They wanted to capture Gina and Meg and interrogate them to find out when exactly they got together. Then, they saw the cute little girl sitting on Gina's lap and flipping through the drawing paper with a fascinated expression. The little girl was small, and she sat there obediently. She had a head of slightly curly blue hair, a small and delicate face, big blue eyes, long eyelashes, a small and cute nose, and a small cherry-like mouth. Oh my God! She's so pretty! Phyllis exclaimed while covering her mouth. Yeah, she's the same as Amy. She's so cute. Jane nodded. Are the boss's genes really that powerful? She's so pretty. I want to have one too. Yabamiya's eyes almost melted into water. She had a motherly smile on her face. That won't do. Elizabeth shook her head. Guai heard the sound and turned to look at the door. Then, she saw a group of beautiful big sisters pouncing on her. Guai, come, let Auntie hug you. Auntie will give you candy. Guai, let Auntie hug you. Auntie has a lot of fun things here. Let me hug you. I want to hug you too. Everyone surrounded little Guai, and for a moment, they forgot about the gossip. Gina smiled as she looked at Xiao Guai, whose arms were already filled with all sorts of toys and presents. Xiao Guai was so lucky to be loved by so many people. At first, she was worried that she wouldn't be able to take care of little Guai. Now, it seemed that she didn't have to worry at all. Everyone cared about little Guai. Gina, you've been hiding this from everyone for a long time. Tell me, when did you give birth to the child? When did you get together with the boss? When do you plan to get it done? Have you officially become the lady boss of Mamis? Angela went up to Gina and asked with a smile. As soon as she said that, the restaurant quieted down. Everyone looked at Gina. The child had been born, and Meg had admitted that it was his child, so he had to take responsibility. This. Gina blushed. She couldn't answer any of these questions. You're still shy. Don't be afraid. If the boss dares to bully you, we'll beat him up for you, Yabamiya said with a smile as she held her shoulder. Yeah, we won't agree if he dares to let you down, the ladies agreed. Gina was so shy that her ears turned red. She looked in the direction of the kitchen for help. Yo, it's quite lively today. Just then, a cold voice sounded from the side. A golden light flashed, and Irina walked out. The restaurant quieted down for a moment. Princess, Gina has a child, and it's with the boss. Phyllis went forward and pointed at little Guai, who was in Reina's arms, and said, Little Guai is so cute. With the boss's child. Irina's gaze swept across little Guai like a knife. The surrounding temperature seemed to have dropped a few degrees. Little Guai, who was hugging a bunch of presents, was stunned. His smile disappeared immediately, and he looked down. He didn't dare to look at Irina, as though he was being stared at by his stepmother. This child. Irina looked at little Guai with surprise in her eyes. Although she couldn't see clearly, she could feel that this child was extraordinary. Then she glanced at Luna, who was at the side. She was even more surprised. Luna, who was only a 9th-tier magician in the morning, had become a 10th-tier magician now. Why are you all standing? Wash your hands and get ready to eat. Meg came out of the kitchen with a few dishes. He smiled and said to Amy, Amy, bring little Guai upstairs and put down the presents first. Anna, help and pack the paintings and bring them upstairs. Okay. Amy agreed. She took half of the things from Xiao Guai's hands and took her up the stairs. Anna also helped to pack the paintings on the table obediently. Then, she carried the paintings upstairs with Anne. Boss, not bad. You've quietly added another little boss to the restaurant, Angela said with a wink. Everyone was also full of questions. They were ready to interrogate Meg. Meg put down the dishes and glanced at Irina guiltily. Then, he looked at everyone and said, Actually, this child isn't mine and Gina's. The little one saw us when she was born, so she thought we were her parents. She's a little mermaid. She's from the same tribe as Gina. The restaurant suddenly quieted down. Everyone's mouths were already in an O shape. Little Guai is my daughter now. She will always be. Gina looked at everyone and said seriously, So, I hope everyone can help me keep this a secret. Don't let the child know about this. Thank you, everyone. Everyone didn't know what expression to show at that moment. It was as awkward as if they were suddenly told that they had walked into the wrong melon field. Irina seemed to be in deep thought. Her body relaxed instantly. I will also continue to be little Guai's father and give her a happy and complete childhood, Meg said with a smile. But... Yabamiya said hesitantly. Hurry up, little Guai. It's time to eat. Amy's voice came from the staircase. Her footsteps were heard as she ran down the stairs. Then, let's celebrate little Guai's arrival tonight. We won't stop until we're drunk. Yabamiya changed the topic and said with a smile. Yeah, to celebrate Gina's birth of her beloved daughter. It's worth a big meal. Everyone changed the topic tacitly when the children came down the stairs. Since the topic was out in the open, everyone didn't continue to talk about Gina being the lady boss. Meg heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that he had jumped around the edge of danger again. To celebrate Mr. Meg's birth of his beloved daughter, Irina said with a faint smile as she raised her wine glass and looked at Meg. Thank you. Meg clinked glasses with her. He felt that there were 10,000 knives hidden in her smile. Chapter 2308. After dinner, little Guai fell asleep in Gina's arms. There was still a satisfied smile on her chubby little face. Her two little dimples made people want to poke them. Then, I'll bring little Guai back to sleep, Gina said with a blushing face as she hugged little Guai. All right. Meg nodded. He reached out and patted little Guai's head. The little girl was still very obedient. Goodbye, boss. The ladies also said their goodbyes and left. Little Guai is so cute. Can I bring her to the square to play when she comes back from school tomorrow? Amy asked Meg. Of course. Meg nodded with a smile. He stood at the entrance of the restaurant and looked at Luna and Byron, who were walking over side by side. He said with a smile, Your teacher Luna is here. Teacher Luna. Amy's eyes lit up. She tiptoed and looked into the distance. She spotted Luna in the crowd with her sharp eyes, and she immediately ran out. Aren't you going to explain to me? Irina said with a half smile as she stood behind Meg with her arms crossed. Meg looked at her, and pondered for a while before saying, I went to the sea god's ruins with Gina, and found an egg under the guidance of the sea god's pearl. The egg opened, and Xiao Guai jumped out from inside. I guessed that she was the reincarnation of the sea god, and Gina was chosen as her guardian. That was why she received the blessing, and her ability jumped from grade 9 to grade 10. Now I believe that there really are gods in this world. The gods that all the races worship might exist. I see. Irina was deep in thought. Everything made sense now. I'll tell you the specific process and details at night. I asked Luna's grandfather out for a drink this morning. He's here now, Meg said, interrupting Irina's thoughts. You're meeting the girl's parents again. Irina frowned. What do you mean by meeting the parents? Byron and I are friends, Meg corrected her. Teacher Luna treats you as a friend, but you want to be her grandfather. Since he's here, why don't you join us for another drink? Meg smiled. Forget it. You old pedants are the most boring. I'm going to take a bath and cultivate for a while. Irina shook her head and went upstairs. Amy was holding Luna's hand and saying something. Byron smiled and walked forward. He looked at Meg and said, Mr. Meg, I heard that your Mamie's business is doing very well. I'm here to drink with you. Will it affect your work? It's okay. Today is the school's opening ceremony, so the restaurant is closed for the day. It won't affect anything. Meg shook his head with a smile as he led Byron and Luna into the restaurant and closed the door. Your restaurant's decoration is really good. Byron entered the restaurant, looked around, and clicked his tongue in wonder. Although he wasn't a glutton, he had patronized almost all of the famous restaurants in Rodu. Mamie's wasn't very big, but the decorations and arrangement were very exquisite. The elements of all kinds of logs made the environment look cozy and warm. Meg smiled as he looked at Luna, and asked, Luna hasn't eaten yet, right? Luna nodded. She was a little embarrassed as she said, I just finished work at the school. I was going to eat at the cafeteria, but Grandpa said he wanted to come and find you. We walked around the Aiden Square on the way, so we haven't eaten yet. Then take a seat. I'll go and make some simple dishes. Let's drink to celebrate the opening of Hope School. Meg asked the two of them to take a seat while he went to the kitchen to make some eggplant with garlic sauce and spicy chicken. There was also some red braised pork in the pot, as well as some sliced beef and peanut for drunkards. After a short while, Meg came out with a tray. This is so sumptuous. Byron looked at the dishes that Meg had laid out. He could already smell the aroma of the red braised pork. His Adam's apple bobbed. Just a few dishes to go with alcohol. What would you like to drink, old sir? Would you like some wine or some rum? I have some 50-year-old rum that Master Old Sim has kept in his cellar. Would you like to try it? Meg said with a smile, 50-year-old rum that Master Old Sim brewed personally. Byron's eyes lit up. He looked at Meg in shock, and asked, You really have it? Rum was good stuff. Byron wasn't an alcoholic, but he was used to drinking a little every day. He didn't like sweet fruit wine, but he had a special liking for the rum that came from the Falk tribe. A bottle of Master Old Sim's rum was hard to come by. He had only drunk a few bottles in the past few decades. He still had a bottle that had been in his cellar for 10 years at home, but he couldn't bear to drink it. He was thinking of drinking it when Gina found her ideal husband. However, Meg actually said that he had 50-year-old rum here, and it was brewed personally by Old Sim. That was the king of alcohol. I'll get it for you now. Meg walked to the wine cabinet, and took a bottle of rum from the top shelf. It was a crude clay bottle with a yellowed seal on the mouth. There was a number 50 engraved on the clay. Byron nodded repeatedly. Yes, it's Master Old Sim's handiwork. It's really a 50-year-old rum. Being in the cellar for 50 years and the 50-year-old history of this bottle were two different things. The quality of the wine wouldn't change after it was bottled from the oak barrel. If it wasn't stored well, the quality of the wine would deteriorate. However, being in the cellar for 50 years meant that this wine had been stored in the oak barrel for 50 years. The aroma of the oak blended perfectly with the wine, brewing the most mellow wine. Meg had moved this wine from Hannah's cellar, so it had to be Old Sim's handiwork. There weren't many of them left in the world. It was a treasure that would disappear with every bottle consumed. Byron looked at the wine on the table with a rather agitated expression. He couldn't sit still any longer. He stood up and moved closer to Meg. After carefully observing it for a while, he asked, Mr. Meg, where did you get this wine? As a rum lover, he had tried many ways to purchase Master Old Sim's personal brew. Not to mention a 50-year-old wine, even a bottle of wine that had been in the cellar for 3 to 5 years was hard to find. I know Master Old Sim's granddaughter. She gave this to me. Meg smiled as he reached out to tear the seal on the bottle. Hey, hey, hey. You can't. Byron hurriedly pressed down on Meg's hand, and shook his head. Let's drink something else. This wine is too good. It's a waste for me to drink it. Meg didn't say it, but Byron knew very well that this bottle of wine could easily sell for hundreds of thousands of copper coins at an auction. Luna sat quietly at the side. She didn't know what was so special about this wine, but she could tell that Meg had brought out a very good wine. It was the kind that even her grandfather couldn't bear to drink. Good wine should be paired with people who know how to drink. Old mister, it's rare for you to come to Chaos City. How can we not treat you with good wine? Meg smiled as he tore the seal and uncorked the bottle. A strong aroma of wine wafted out. Chapter 2309. The aroma of the wine permeated the air. Amidst the rich aroma, there was also a hint of oak aroma. Byron's hand froze, and he couldn't help but take another whiff of the aroma. He felt a little tipsy just by smelling the aroma. Even Luna, who didn't usually drink, had her eyes lit up when she smelled the aroma. She didn't feel cravings, but rather, she felt that the aroma was very special and left a deep impression on her. Mr. Mag, you. Sigh, you're really making me feel ashamed. Byron heaved a resigned sigh at the sight of the opened wine bottle. However, he was looking at Mag with a sense of intimacy as if he were looking at a junior. If you are ashamed, then I am guilty. Mag took 3 wine glasses, and filled 2 to the brim. Gina's wine glass was already half filled. She picked it up and said, I'll punish myself with a glass first. Then, she finished it in one gulp. Sit, sit, sit. Why are you talking about punishment when we are drinking? I don't know what to say when you treat me with such good wine. Byron looked at Meg with increasing satisfaction. It's all in the wine. Meg raised his glass and clinked it with Byron's. That makes sense. Byron also raised his glass. The amber rum swirled slightly in the crystal glass. There were no impurities in the clear and translucent liquor. It was like a gemstone, intoxicating. He placed the glass to his mouth and took a sip. The delicate and sweet taste made one unconsciously intoxicated. The rich aroma had a hint of wood. Only wine stored in oak barrels could emit such a wonderful taste. The rich taste and the lingering aftertaste in his mouth after he swallowed made him close his eyes uncontrollably. This was a 50-year-old rum. The long aftertaste made him feel as if he was looking at the rings of history. In the deep and serene wine cellar, the brewed rum lay in barrels made of 100-year-old oak, quietly fermenting. An old winemaker sat on the barrel and drank, as if he was also quietly waiting for the good wine to come out of the cellar. Byron opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with tears as he nodded. As expected of a 50-year-old rum. Good wine. This was indeed old Sim's personal brew. There was no second person in the world who could brew such a wine. He had never thought that he would be able to drink such fine wine when he was only here for a simple meal. Then you should drink more today. Meg smiled and picked up his chopsticks. Come, eat more. Let's drink slowly. All right. Byron picked up a peanut with his chopsticks and tossed it into his mouth. The crispy peanut had a spicy flavor, and the more he chewed, the more fragrant it became. It was a perfect match for wine. Good wine and good food. Meg and Byron's chatterboxes gradually opened up. Meg had quite a good impression of this old man. During their brief interaction in Rodu, he had come to realize that this old man, who held a lofty position but was still interested in basic education and academic research, was quite a special being. Only such a person could educate a woman like Luna. One had to know that many young ladies from wealthy families in Rodu couldn't even choose who to marry. Byron looked at Meg and nodded repeatedly with a smile in his eyes. I heard from Luna that you gave a lot of help to the construction of Hope School. This toast is to you, Byron said to Meg as he raised his wine glass. He was already a little tipsy. It was all thanks to Teacher Luna that Hope School could be built. I only helped a little. Meg raised his wine glass and clinked it with Byron's with a smile. You don't have to be humble. Byron shook his head. Luna had already brought up the problems of these children to me a few times in the past 2 years. I couldn't do anything about it, and could only ask her to help as much as she could. But when you came, the foundation was successfully established. The money was in place, and the connections were in place. That was why Hope School could be built in such a short time. I've been in the government for decades, so I understand these things. Luna has met a benefactor. Luna, who was eating at the side, paused in the middle of picking up a piece of red braised pork. She also turned to look at Meg. If you say that, then I'm sorry. Meg put down his wine glass with a smile, and said, the construction of Hope School will benefit Chaos City for a long time. It was all because of City Lord Michael's strong support that all the procedures were approved so quickly. I don't dare to take all the credit for this. Byron laughed as he patted Meg on the shoulder. You're very good, kid. After that, they talked about the implementation of the decimal system and the multiplication table. Under Byron's strong support, this matter had already been implemented in the Roth Empire. After 3 rounds of drinks, the dishes on the table were almost finished. Byron was already drunk. Rum was a strong liquor, and had a strong aftertaste. This was a liquor that had been kept in the cellar for 50 years, so its strength was not to be underestimated. I think you're a very good kid. Byron grabbed Meg's hand, and nodded with satisfaction. I'm relieved to hand Luna over to you. After saying that, he slowly slumped onto the table. What do you mean by hand over to me? Meg raised his eyebrows. His first reaction was to wonder if Irina, who was taking a bath upstairs, heard that ridiculous sentence. Grandpa. Gina looked at the drunk Byron and blushed. How could he say that to Meg? They had nothing to do with each other. The restaurant quietened down instantly. Meg and Luna sat there, and didn't know what to say to break the awkwardness. Grandpa was drunk, and said some weird things. Please don't take it to heart, Gina said to Meg with a blushing face. It's all right. He must be worried about leaving you alone in Chaos City. Meg shook his head with a smile. He looked at the drunk Byron and said, I'll call for a horse-drawn carriage to send you back. Thank you. Luna nodded. She also wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Meg went out to hail a horse-drawn carriage, and helped Byron into the carriage. He instructed the coachman to help Byron into the house when they arrived, and gave him a little extra for the fare. Luna, you two can go back first. These 2 bottles of wine are for the old mister. You can hold them for him. Meg passed a bag into the carriage. All right. Thank you. Luna nodded. The horse-drawn carriage set off, and Luna put down the curtain. She heaved a sigh of relief, and loosened her left hand. She realized that her palm was sweaty, and she couldn't help but chuckle. She reached out to touch her burning face, but she couldn't help but think about what her grandfather said earlier. She didn't know if he was speaking nonsense when he was drunk, or if he was being serious. If he really wanted to entrust her to Meg, then, should she reject or agree? Then, she thought about those words that Vivian always nagged at her, and her face became even hotter. Of course Mr. Meg was good. She couldn't find another man as gentle and talented as him. He could cook and write well. Chapter 23:10. After sending Gina and Byron off, Meg returned to the dining room. Just as he was about to clear the table, Irina came down from upstairs in a bathrobe and looked at Meg with a smile. Meg sensed a dangerous aura from her smile. As expected, Irina said, "When I was bathing just now, I think I heard someone entrusting his life to me." "Really?" "Oh, Byron was drunk just now, so he might have said something weird. I didn't listen carefully." Meg had an "I don't know anything" expression on his face. Irina glared at him, but didn't continue to dwell on this issue. She pulled out a chair and sat down. "What do you think is going on with the sea god's ruins?" The existence of God had always been an illusory thing to Irina. The elves believed in the god of life, and she had even gained the recognition of the tree of life. However, other than that vague concern, she couldn't confirm if God really existed, or if God was still alive. Meg and the rest went to the sea god's ruins that Lantis believed in, and brought back little Guy. Whether it was little Guy's mysterious aura or Gina who suddenly broke through to become a 10th-tier great magic caster, she was curious about the relationship between this and God. We went to the Lantis ruins. There, Gina used the sea god's pearl to open the sea god's ruins. Meg recounted the process of their exploration of the sea god's ruins to Irina. Irina listened attentively and pondered from time to time. After Meg finished, she asked, "In that case, are there many small spaces that we don't know about in this world, and God is hidden in those spaces? They might have already died, or they might have re-entered the cycle of reincarnation, but they still maintain a connection with this world." "That's possible." Meg nodded. From little Guy's reaction to God might have fought an endless war with the great old ones back then. This hostile relationship might have been imprinted in their souls. Even after reincarnation, they still remember it. Then, when little Guy grows up, will she be God? I'm not sure either. Meg shook his head. However, raising a sea god sounded quite fulfilling. Irina crossed her arms and scrutinized Meg. "Now that you and Gina have a child, what do you plan to do?" "You know that doesn't count." Meg scratched his head. "Even if I know, it doesn't count. Little Guy keeps calling you father and mother in front of others. Do you still want others to think that you're a good man who is as pure as ice and as pure as jade? Although we had a child, we didn't get married. Do you think everyone is a fool, or are you a fool?" Irina sneered. Meg choked. Although that was the truth, and he was a good man who was as pure as ice, as Irina had said, as long as little Guy wasn't raised in secret, this situation was inevitable. His relationship with Gina would definitely be different in front of others because of this child. And this was undoubtedly a betrayal to Irina. Meg stole a glance at Irina. It was already beyond his expectations that she could still sit there so calmly without even taking out her foldable chair. "Why don't we lay our cards on the table?" Meg asked Irina. "What happens after we lay our cards on the table?" "Close the restaurant. Leave Chaos City." "Where are you going?" "What do you want to do?" Irina's soul asked. Meg looked at Irina, and suddenly felt that she was very cute. He took a step forward, got close to her, and said, "If you don't lay your cards on the table, then give me a chance to pursue you. Even if I have to change my identity, I still want you to be the lady boss of Mamis." Irina looked at Meg, and kept quiet for a while before suddenly asking, "Which race do you like? Elf? Beast-eared girl? Little fox? Big sister succubus?" "As long as it's you, any race will do," Meg said honestly. "Then, how do you want me to make an appearance? A fangirl who's obsessed with your food, or Amy's mother from The Return of the King?" Irina asked again. Meg considered seriously for a while, and said, I think Amy's mother from The Return of the King is pretty good. Compared to the lame drama of an ignorant young girl being tricked into the head chef's bed, Meg was actually more optimistic about the drama of Amy's mysterious mother suddenly returning and becoming the lady boss of the restaurant. It would be perfectly justifiable. Meg had even thought of the lines. It's you. It's you. Why were you so heartless to leave us father and daughter behind? Actually, I had my reasons, but I'm back now. Look, this line is so powerful. Then, wouldn't I become a woman who despises the poor and loves the rich? Irina frowned. As long as you're strong enough, there won't be such a problem. There's only one Irina in this world. For a restaurant owner, a high-level elf is already a very powerful existence. It doesn't have to be Irina. Meg shrugged. I understand. Irina nodded. Then, she changed the topic and said, however, if I can't even control these little girls in your restaurant, then wouldn't it be boring to be the lady boss? As long as you're happy. Meg didn't know what else to say. All right, it's settled then. I'll make a grand comeback tomorrow. Irina's lips curled up slightly. Gina tucked little Guai in and looked at her from the side with a gentle smile on her face. For some reason, just looking at her made her heart feel very calm. Ever since Lantist fell into the underground city, her empty heart seemed to have finally found a place to settle down. In this world, other than the boss, she had another person worth looking forward to. Little Guai was so cute and so young. She needed to take care of her carefully and nurture her until she grew up. She didn't have much confidence in herself, but she had great confidence in Little Guai. Little Guai was too smart. She could do anything as long as she was taught. However, she was a little worried. Would she have to leave when she grew up? After all, she could be the sea god. Meow, meow, Little Guai turned around and hugged her hand. She pressed her face against her arm and revealed a little smile. Gina felt that her heart was about to melt. She didn't care anymore. Whether she was the reincarnation of the sea god or not, she was her daughter now. Good night, Little Guai. Gina kissed her forehead gently and closed her eyes to sleep. Meg worked hard the entire night, but he still woke up early the next day to make breakfast for everyone. He was looking forward to how Irina planned to appear in front of everyone today and announce her sovereignty as Mamie's lady boss. End of chapter. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.